Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Snap Decisions. I am your host with the most, your Snap DJ, and I have a very special guest with me today. It is Gaming with Flash X. Gaming, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on, man. I know all you guys that stream the game and stream and stuff like that have a really, really busy schedule, so I really appreciate you being on.
It is very much my pleasure, sir. And from this point forward, you can just call me Flash. That is much easier.
I
And
will call you Flash, one of my favorite all-time DC superheroes, so that's very easy to remember.
we'll get there.
Oh man. Well, welcome. And first off, tell all my listeners where they can find you and where and when do you stream?
Yeah. See, this has become more easy now over the course of time. So,
I'm sure.
head on over YouTube and Twitch. It's the same, right? It's at Gaming with Flash X. Very simple. And of course, Twitter has to be difficult, so that one is different. It's at GW Flash X. You can find me doing all my stuff there. As far as scheduling for streams goes, it's kind of all over the place. Wednesdays is the one that's locked in. It's definitive. We do that stuff with Glazer and the stream team and everything. So Wednesday nights, you're always going to find me streaming Snap. Thursdays, I'm trying to get my ball rolling on my Throwback Thursday streams. So pay attention, look out for those. Those are trying to be more consistent. So yeah.
Nice. Oh, that throwback. I've got to hear
Oh,
about that.
oh yeah.
I am a man.
We'll
You
get
want to talk about? I'm still stuck in the '80s, so I'm.
speaking the language.
What do you do for Throwback Thursday? That sounds cool.
Usually it's most things that are either retro, throwback, and I like to say retro adjacent. And what
Love
that
it.
means when I say that, I use that statement meaning like modern things that have that retro feel. Like there have been a lot of beat 'em ups and shooters coming out recently. That they had that one at the Game Fest. I think it was on IGN Live. They had some arcade shoot. It was like the only thing they showed the entire day that looked good.
Oh, that was horrible, wasn't it?
Yes.
Oh my God, was that bad? I did see like a Punch-Out looking game too.
Okay, I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah,
But
so
IGN's terrible. Everybody knows it. They've been terrible
yeah,
for a long time. But it's usually that type of stuff. We've been playing a lot of Genesis, Super Nintendo,
oh, that's
NES,
awesome.
Dreamcast, N64. I kind of bounce around, and I've started to ask the chat, okay, what system is next? And then they'll pick the system, and I'll go, okay, and then I pick a game from that system, or whatever the case may be. I usually end up ending those streams with a round of Tecmo Super Bowl, which to me is
Oh
the greatest
man,
sports game ever made.
Bo Jackson,
Um,
baby.
Right. And then I have the ROMs from different years. So then I got to pick one. I'm like, is it updated rosters from this year or is it one from 1994 or something random where I just kind of bounce them around and stuff like that. So the last stream was really fun because I beat Gunstar Heroes for the first time ever. So that
Nice.
was exciting. So,
That's
and
awesome.
what I learned about that game is I don't know if it's because of the ROM or I don't know if the original cartridge was different, but one thing I realized is that there's unlimited continues in that game, which is interesting.
Ooh.
Like you can just keep dying. It'll keep restarting you from the level you're on or whatever checkpoint you've reached. But like you can just keep going. There's no continue. There's no like, okay, you've used 3 continues, you know the standard number.
Oh yeah,
And like,
yeah.
and you're done. Like that's it. Now you got to restart the whole game. And I'm like, that's an interesting. I don't remember if it was like that from back in the day. I guess it was, but I'm like, that's fascinating because most games from back then, they're like, no, you got 3 continues. And if you
Yeah,
use
they
them, you're done.
were.
Finished.
Yeah.
Gunstar Heroes was like, no, this game is hard enough where you can keep if you have the metal to keep going, go have at it.
Man, I would have loved that for some of the stuff I was playing. Whenever you bring up oh gosh, you know what game comes to my mind is the Batman, the one from the '89 movie.
Yes.
Oh my God, that game used to drive
now,
me.
are you talking about the NES one or
the
okay?
all I remember is I had
Sega
you
one.
had to bounce up the clock tower, and you end up getting to this boss that fights you before the Joker.
Yeah,
It was supposed to be that big dude that beat up Batman when he was up by the bell.
Yes.
And then you get past him, and then Joker has that huge long gun that he's firing.
Okay,
at you.
this is the NES one. Yes, that is the NES one.
Dude, I like where you had to jump and the little like intricacies that there were.
That's another. That's another one of those games that I never beat. I actually watched my cousin beat that when it was out. We had it on NES, and I actually watched him beat it. I was like, oh man, that's cool. I could never. That's another one of those games that if I play it now, I could probably get through it. I have one game specifically that I historically always want to get through. It's the only physical cartridge I still own.
Okay.
And it's a random obscure game. I don't know if you remember Jackal, right?
Oh yeah.
For NES. And they actually had an arcade cabinet for it that I did not know there was an arcade cabinet for until I went to Galloping Ghost a few years ago. And Galloping Ghost has the most arcade cabinets in the world, right? They're
Oh,
like
that's
almost at 1,000
fantastic.
now. So there was a Jackal cabinet, and I'm like, there's no way there's an arcade for this game.
I remember seeing that actually now that you're mentioning it.
But
Yeah.
I still own the physical cart, right? Because it's a special, like my dad, I grew up in New York, right? And my dad worked in
Yeah.
Manhattan. He worked on Wall Street. And he used to always, back in the day, he used to always have the tables out. You could buy games off the street, whatever the case.
Yep.
He came home with that game. I was like, this game's kind of fun. And over the years, I'm like, Jackal really holds up over time. I was like, it's tough and it really holds up. But one day I'm gonna beat that game because it's like hard. You want to hard. That game's hard.
You know which one it was for me, and I still have the cartridge too. And like you, it's the only game I still have. The stupid Friday the 13th NES game, which was the dumbest playing game you'd ever want to play, but it drove me insane because
Yep.
I'm a big horror fan and I love Friday the 13th. I always
Yep.
have, and I just could never beat it. I got the closest I got to Jason the second time when he had the 2 bars of health, one on either side. And I knew the pattern. So you're sitting there doing the pattern over and over, dodge, 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 hit, dodge, dodge, dodge. And I was doing it over and over again. And I had him down to almost a quarter bar of the second one. And my hands just like locked up from doing that over and over. And it's like, I still, of course, you're sweating too, because you're getting to the end and you're like, and all of a sudden my hand cramped and I missed. And I'm like, no.
Oh no.
Yes. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm like, I don't think I ever played it again after that, but I still have the cartridge.
Yes.
But oh my God.
I'm not surprised that happened because what most people don't realize is that NES controllers were not ergonomic by any way, shape, or form.
We're not.
Now the top loader came with the rounded controllers that was similar to the SNES. So I was like, okay, this is a lot better. Like this will work.
I think Batman drove me to, or I'm sorry, I think Friday the 13th drove me to play RPGs more on the NES because there was no button mashing. You just walked around.
I didn't pick up. It's funny. The first RPG I remember playing wasn't an NES game. It was Tombs and Treasures. I knew nothing about RPG. I was like, what is this game? I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just pressing buttons. I'm like, if I played it now, it'd probably make a lot more sense because I didn't really pick up RPGs until PlayStation. Okay. And I had a good friend of mine. We're still good friends to this day. I grew up with, and I went to high school with. He was like, yo, you got to play this game. He's like, I'm telling you, this is good. I know you don't play these kind of games, but play this. He gave me the first disc for Final Fantasy VII.
Oh man, I was just going to ask. It had to be Final Fantasy VII.
And from that moment forward, I'm like, oh, this is, and then JRPGs became a whole thing for me. I got so locked into those after that. Like
I've been playing them since the first Final Fantasy on NES. And I can remember when we were, me and my friends were probably in our teens, like 16, 17 years old. I remember buying that game. And at the time it cost it was $100 for the cart because there was a battery in it. It was one of the first games you could save your play.
That's right.
And it was like, I remember saving up for it, and we would literally, and there was no co-op, but my cousin and my friend were sitting there and they'd watch me play. And I would just go through the whole thing and they'd be like, all right, well, you missed this. You got to go back and get that. And they're directing me around.
Yeah.
And we'd be up until the sun was coming up, dude, playing these games. When Final Fantasy VII came out, oh my God, it blew my mind.
Final Fantasy VII is one of my favorite games of all time, but it's my biggest shame. And I'll tell you why. My biggest shame because I tell people, technically, I've never beaten the game, but I got to the end. I got to on the cliff, and you fight Sephiroth at the end. I could just never finish the fight.
You and me are in the same boat. I never did.
I'll tell you what happened as to why I couldn't finish. And you might know where I'm going with this.
I think
so. I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm like, I can't. What is happening? Yep. So at that time, you go on the computer, Game Facts, right? Remember Game Facts? And I'm just like, okay, you're going through stuff. And I'm like, they're like, there's probably no good way for you to beat this game without Knights of the Round.
Yep.
And I'm like,
the raising chocobo thing, man.
And I'm like, you're kidding me. So I go back through my saves and I'm like, I don't have one that I can go back to. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
Yep.
so,
Yep.
so
Dude, I did the same exact thing. I waylaid through it all, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm doing good, man. And I'm going to get to the end, and I'm fighting them, and I get him down like one thing, and I'm like, all right, this is going really well. And then I get him down the next thing, and again, my friends and I, same friends, are sitting there, watching me play. So they're like, and then I die, and I go then do it again. I die again. They're like, well, maybe you don't have enough experience. Just go around and just fight crap and build up your levels. That didn't even matter. And then I found out years later, because I just got frustrated with it, like you.
And you just thought, right?
And I'm like, no,
at the time I was like, and I was the messed up part about it is that I was aware of the summons. I know it exists in the game because I saw people play it, and my friend had it. He was like, "Yo, you gotta check this out." And Knights of the Round's like a 12-minute summons, and it's freaking fantastic.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, okay, cool. And then when I got to the end, when I eventually a couple years later was really getting into it, and I'm like, oh, hold on a minute. You're not about to tell me that I need that to finish this game.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you do. I'm like, oh my God. So now it was to the point where I was like, well, I'm now, I'm older now, and we got those remakes came out on PlayStation that are freaking fantastic so far.
Yeah, they are.
I still got to play the first one. Like I started playing the first one. I played maybe like 10 or so hours, or not even 10 hours, maybe like 5 or so hours. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna come back to it. And then the second one came out, and I'm like, oh my God, I go back to the first one. But now I'm like, I might as well just play through that, because I know what most of the story is. I know what I know what the story is already. I got to the end. So
you're getting a little backstory for it now, like,
and which is fine.
But,
they get to dig so much deeper into the character, into Jesse and all these characters that were just kind of one-offs, and is like you forget about them. I like that. I think that's great for that particular game, because that's one of the most beloved RPGs ever, right? So I'm just like, I'll just do these, because what I'm really looking forward to, and we just mentioned Knights of the Round, I am looking forard to what Knights of the Round looks like now.
Oh my, could you imagine what the graphics for that's gonna look like, dude?
It's gonna blow people's minds.
That's the first thing I said when Part 3 comes out, and you can use that. Oh my God. They might not have that could have been why they had to have it come out the way it did, because I'm thinking maybe they didn't even have the tech to do that yet.
It's possible, because the way they want to make that look, I'm sure, because they can't skimp on that, right? Because that's a all-time iconic summons in Final Fantasy games, right? So just like, okay, we got to get this right, because and I wasn't. It's funny because when I started playing Remake, I was unsure before it came out. I was like, I talked to my friend, because like I said, the same friend, me and him were big Final Fantasy fans. I was like, yeah, the remake's coming out. I don't know how I feel about the combat. It's not turn-based. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna feel about that. I'm a big turn-based guy. I love turn-based.
You can
put
that switch thing on that kind of makes it turn-based.
I don't like that, honestly, though, because when I started playing it, and I'm like, you know what? This works.
It's not so bad.
It works the way it is. I was like, okay, I get it. It's fine. They did a good job. Stamp of approval from me, because I'm like, taking a game that is hardwired to be turn-based and going, let's just shift it a little bit, and now you could play it like this, and like, you know what? Damn, kudos, because you pulled it off.
No, you're right. They did. It's almost like they combined action and turn-based enough. Or where it's not really that much different. So it's not like it's not like those immensely hard the games that they have out now, where where it takes you forever to beat one boss over and over and over again.
I don't have time for those things.
I mean, Dark Souls and that, I can't play those.
I don't want to.
I have zero patience for that.
I'm at the point, it's funny, as you get older, you get older, you have a family, you do all these things, you have all these other responsibilities, and you're like, you know what? I understand why people play games on easy.
Yes.
I have time. I just want to get through the story. I want to get through how cool the game is. I'm good. I don't need to. I have nothing to prove anymore.
I'm 100%.
The last thing I did when I did that was like, one of my crowning game achievements was Halo Reach. When Halo Reach came out, I was working at Best Buy, right? And a bunch of the guys it was 360. A bunch of guys at the time, they were like, "Oh, we're getting on Halo. We're gonna do co-op. We're gonna play through." And I was like, you know what? You guys go ahead. So my crowning game achievement is that I beat the campaign for Halo Reach on Legendary solo.
There you go.
So I'm like, and I still have I got receipts, right? It's still in my Xbox gamer tag. It's still in my history from way back. So I'm like, it's in my achievements log. So I'm like, no, I'll do that. I tell people that to this day with great pride, because I'm like, playing through the campaign of any Halo game on Legendary by yourself is a whoo.
That's pretty tough,
It
man. Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Whew. All right.
that's
So I'm
tough.
like, even Reach, and Reach was great. Reach is one of my favorite campaign Halos because it's just like it's the Rogue One of the Halo games, right?
Yep.
Because you're just like, it's funny because, and I still have the Legendary Edition came
Okay. Yeah.
with the set with the Reach team. And I have the Legendary Edition for Halo 3 as well. I have the Master Chief helmet
Yep.
replica
Oh,
thing.
I've seen
I
that.
still have
Yeah,
that. I
yeah.
still have that.
That's
So
awesome.
it's so crazy playing through that game. And again, this is before Rogue One came out, way before,
Yep.
right? So you're like, you get to a certain point, you're like, okay, this is interesting. And then the first character dies off, and you're like, wait a minute. Nobody's making it out of this. You're like, oh no.
They're all
I gotta
gonna
play
die.
through the whole rest of this watching these characters die that I'm controlling.
Yep.
I'm like, oh no. I don't think I love this. But it's great. It's great because they get through, and again, it's so Rogue One, right? They
Yep.
get through it, and it's just like, and then Chief comes at the end, and it's just like you see the last one like crawling to him, and then Chief shows up, and it's just like, I think it's time for me to replay that game.
They were destined to die at the end. Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
man.
like you said, like Rogue One.
Like
That
Rogue
whole
One. It's
whole
almost like
cast.
Rogue One looked at Halo Reach and was like, that's a good story. Now, granted,
yeah, they could have. They take ideas from all different stuff like that. You never know. Like that actually. I mean, Rogue One was such a good film. That the ending of that scene was poetic. Like where they're just seeing where the Death Star, when they shot, and they're just seeing the tidal waves coming for them, and it's like, yep, well. Now you know where that whole team went. The entire team wiped out. Like,
and that's the unfortunate part about a lot of that. It's like you watch the movies, right? You watch the original trilogy, you watch these things, and you're like, damn, what happened to the
what happened to the team that got the plans for the Death Star? What happened to all them? Yeah.
They're like, yeah, we'll get to that. Many years later, we'll get to that. Don't worry.
Oh man, I love it. Yeah, it's crazy, dude. No, I've always been a big RPGer because I can't play shooters. I've always had like a motion thing. Going back to like Dark Forces, when Star Wars had Dark Forces years ago, I couldn't play it. I'm sitting there and like watching the screen move, and I'm like, I can't. I tried recently when one of the new the Resident Evil Village came out. And I'm like, all right, this might seem that, and I'm walking around, and I honestly was playing for 15 minutes. I'm like, nope, getting sick to my stomach. I'm like, yeah, I can't.
And that's unfortunate. It's funny though, for whatever reason, whether it be your reason or a different one, shooters are kind of like, there's no gray area for shooters.
Yeah.
I don't think. It's either you play them or you don't play them for whatever reason, period. And I've played shooter. Like I said, I've played a lot of Halo. Halo's where I cut my teeth with shooters, kind of period, because. And, you know, you just as well as anybody else in our age range or older or whatever the case may be, remember the time like before Halo. And I'm not talking about like we're not talking about the godfather of shooters. We're not talking about Doom and Quake and stuff like that, because I didn't play PC like that in those days. Consoles didn't have a quintessential shooter. Like PlayStation 2 had like some Call of Duty. So like I remember SOCOM and Medal of Honor, and those were fun. Those were good, right?
Yeah.
But shooters still felt weird.
Yeah,
right?
they did.
And it wasn't until Microsoft with Halo and they put that Xbox controller in your hand and they're like, this is how a shooter is supposed to feel on a console. And you're like, oh, yeah, damn, you're right. This is exactly how this is supposed to feel. And all it took was them to go, we're going to put a thumbstick here and we're going to put another one here. And that's how it's supposed to feel. And you're like, oh my God. Because Sony it's got the two thumbsticks right next to each other and it feels weird.
Yep.
Microsoft was like, nah, this is how it's supposed to feel. And you're like, oh my God, this is how it's supposed to feel. And then it was off to the races. Because Halo, you got Halo LAN parties and all of that stuff. And I did all that stuff because before I got to Best Buy, I used to work at, now granted, you're going to remember this, EB Games.
Oh yeah.
Good friend of mine GameStop bought them, right? Before they liquidated EB Games, there was an EB game. Most people I tell that, they're like, what's EB Games? I'm like, don't even.
Electronics Boutique.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I worked there for a few years, and I that was where I met a group of people that put me onto those things that are a part of me now. That's when I was first introduced to anime, right?
Yep.
I was, right? So it's like,
Yep.
Those were the days with those where I was introduced to those things. We used to have a our store was it was real
Oh,
small.
they were
It was in
boxes.
a mall,
Yeah, they
and it was
yep,
like a box,
yep,
literally. But right at the front, as soon as you walk in, straight to the left, we had they had like a console setup, right? For the
mhm,
testing demos or whatever case may
yep,
be. And there was an Xbox. And because most of us in there, we were Xbox people. We're like, no, we're
yep.
Xbox. And this is when everybody was like, oh, Sony, Sony, Sony. We're like, no. Xbox just came out and you can do this. It's got a hard drive. Da, 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 da. We're running it on all these days. It looks great. Right. So we used to put, and the first game, and I'm a huge fan of fighting games. It is my
Okay,
number one like genre. Right. So I
okay,
know that's one of
yeah.
those things. Check that off the list. Right. So I remember my manager at the time, Steve Turner, he put Dead or Alive 3 on there. Now, granted, we're showcasing this stuff
Right,
for the most part because we want people to buy an Xbox.
yeah,
People walk in there like, oh my god, that looks amazing, right?
yep.
Because it did. Dead or Alive 3. But what ended up happening along with that is that the group of us in the store, we would play it. We're like, oh man, this is great. And then we would start to do like battles. Like people on Brave walking. So it became like, because DOA 3 had team battles.
Yep.
So they had like I think it was a team of 5. And then once one gets defeated, the other one jumps in. Right. You couldn't tag in and out. It wasn't like MVC, but one would die and the next one would jump in, next one would
Right.
jump in. And you
Yeah,
had to
yeah.
pick all random. You couldn't pick who you wanted, had to
Yep.
be all random, right? We were like ultimate test of skill. So, sometimes somebody would walk in the store, whoever's behind the counter, sometimes they would walk in and go, challenge. Who, me? Yeah, let's go. And then
So you grab customers to do it?
customers would do it
Oh
too.
my god, that's
It
hilarious.
was it was great.
That's
It
hilarious.
was an excellent time to to be a gamer and involved in that culture there. But it was like I said, Xbox kind of changed the whole narrative. And then Halo 2 came out, and then Xbox Live, and then after that, it was like, we were all the way whew, off to the races. Because
Yeah.
Microsoft, I don't think gets enough credit for kind of shifting the narrative of gaming, because
Mm.
Sony was still kind of like, well, we don't really do online like that, and da 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 da. And they had like SOCOM was their one online game, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
was
they were
like
late to the
SOCOM or
party
bust.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just like that was it. And then Microsoft was like, no. And you know what? Credit for Microsoft, because even though they've changed, and Phil Spencer is at the head of that stuff now, and like they've changed people over the years, but I think their long-term goal has always been like, okay, this is for multiplayer. This is multiplayer. This is, you know, X, Y, and Z. And because when you look at those flagship Microsoft games, they're all games to play with people. Halo,
Oh yeah.
Gears of War,
Yeah.
all these racing games. Like they're like play with people. And granted, it, for comparison purposes, Sony has cornered the okay, we're first person, AAA, big budget. And I say first person, I mean single player,
Single
big
player.
budget
Yeah. The
games
RPGs.
like God
Yeah.
of War, this
Yeah.
Spider-Man, which is fine. That's great. I have nothing wrong with that. The two things can exist in the same,
Mhm.
landscape. Um, but I just think it's sometimes too many people go, well, there's too much attacking going here. Look, if you want to play a bunch of multiplayer things, you want to play, go over here. Microsoft got you covered. Everything's stable.
Yep.
They're already the stuff that Microsoft wants to do, and I pinned this longer than several years ago, maybe like 5 or so years ago. I'm like, I used to tell people this all the time. I'm like, I'm standing on this hill, and trust me, we'll get there. I was like, Microsoft's long-term goal is to be like, not necessarily strictly software based, but just kind of like, you know what? Microsoft wants you don't need a console if you don't want to buy one. You just get this and you can play your stuff on a thing, whether it be on a console, on a PC, on a tablet, right? Because I use the Game Pass thing on my tablet
Oh
sometimes,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Just the new TVs, the Samsung TVs that are printing with the Game Pass app on it. I'm like, that's what they want. And everybody's so mad at like, oh, the Xbox console is dying. And I'm like, it's not necessarily dying. It's actually Microsoft going, you don't need that if you don't want it.
Right. Yeah.
That's a choice that they're making. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh no, it's hardware sales for Microsoft. It sucks. I'm like, yeah, probably because they don't care about that. They want your Game Pass subscription. They don't this box here. They don't care about that. They want you
Yeah.
to be enveloped in the landscape of the ecosystem. They don't even care about the Sony needs you to get the box. That's which is why they give you these PC games now. They're like, oh, you can get Spider-Man 1, you can get God of War 1, but if you want the second one, you got to buy a PlayStation 5.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
See, that's their hook.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
need you to buy the box. Microsoft is like, nah, you don't have to buy the box if you don't want to. Now, and needless to say, everybody's going to have their different opinions about a company merging or buying other companies, right? The recent rumors about Microsoft perhaps thinking about putting in a bid to buy Valve or whatever the case may be, for me, gets me excited because I'm like, well, that means Microsoft owns Steam at that point. That means Microsoft can
That's
take
true.
their software and go, oh, here's a Steam Deck remember that handheld Xbox that you've been asking for? Here it is. And we don't even have to make it. This company already makes it. So we're just going to take all our stuff and put it over here. Bloop. Here you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really one of the only ones. I mean, we sell those in Best Buy now with the what is it? Rogo or something with the, and then there's, of course, PlayStation tried to make one, but it was awful. It was
before you
terrible.
continue. I need to say something about that because I remember before it came out, people were talking about it. Oh, this is the new Vita, and I looked at it and I looked at some of the specs and the blueprint, and I'm like, this is not a Vita.
It's awful.
This is not a Vita.
Yep.
This is a tablet. You have a tablet. You have something at home that does this already.
Yep.
So, but you're gonna go out and Sony's gonna get you to pay money for this thing. Do you have a tablet at home? Guess what? You can do this because I've played Spider-Man on my tablet with my PS5 controller just fine.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if they're giving you a new Vita, great. I would love that. Give me a new Vita.
Oh yeah. That system was fun.
Yeah, whatever that thing is, whatever the name of it is, I don't even remember what it's called.
Yeah, we have one sitting in our store now, open box, because they keep getting returned. You know what people don't realize too is that sure, if you have a really good internet connection at home, it'll work great, but that's a mobile thing. You want to take it with you. That's the whole point. And then if you go, I remember a kid in the store bought one. He brought it into our store. He couldn't even play it. It was unplayable. Like off the internet that's in the store. It's like, nope, forget it.
You can't. And that's what people realized once they got it in their hands. They're like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. And it's not performing as well as I hoped it would.
Yep. Yeah. That was they do weird things like that. Sometimes they do like reactionary stuff. I mean, I've always been going back to your point about like co-op gaming. The first system I ever owned was an Intellivision. Now that you had to play with two players, there was no options. There were some games you could play yourself, but most of them, like and back then the sports games were really good. The football game on that was good for its time. The basketball game, the hockey, all of them were pretty good. But you needed two players to play, which was good because it encouraged you. You know, my friends would come over, we'd all play and everything like that. So it kind of encouraged you to do that. But then as they went on, you're right. One system kind of divvied off and went one way for, like you said, multiplayer. The other system kind of stayed, we'll have the Final Fantasy stuff and we'll have the RPG things and so on and so forth. I bought my first Xbox, ironically, because of Knights of the Old Republic. That was the reason why I bought it.
I was going to mention that earlier, too, because I was talking about RPGs and I was like, Knights of the Old Republic.
It's a reason why I bought it.
Knights of the Old Republic opened a different door for me that I didn't know was a thing because I'd always played turn-based RPGs, right? And then Microsoft was like, well, we don't really have those. I'm like, okay, well, what do you have? Well, we got Fable. We got this other thing here. We got this Star Wars thing. And I was like, okay, I was just really starting to take that interest in Star Wars like that, right? I was like, okay, this is Knights of the Old Republic. This is, I'm playing. I'm like, oh, all right, wait a minute. This is really good. Oh my God. And I was like, and let me tell you something, Joe. It wasn't until years later. And when I say years later, I mean like within the last like handful of years.
Damn.
That I realized Knights of the Old Republic was a D&D game in disguise.
Yeah, no, technically it is. The way that the answers come up and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Because it was
absolutely.
that, and everything was like D10 based, and I was like, I
Yes.
don't back then I was like, oh, it's just okay. Well, I'm doing my attacks, and some of them miss, some of them hit. Okay,
Yep.
whatever. Who cares? We're having fun. People were like, that's a D&D game, dude. They got D10s. It was like it's doing checks. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yep. 100%. I can remember battling like the bigger bosses in that game and thinking to myself, okay, because you're used to playing, from coming from Final Fantasy, right? You're figuring, all right, I'm going to level these guys up. I'm going to get them up so high that I'll be able to beat the boss. This
Yep.
game, you didn't do that. So there really wasn't much of that. And it was like when you get to one and you just die and you find yourself, okay, I got to go back to the save point, start over again and go back in. And then you do it. And finally the odds will be in your favor from the rolls and you'll win. And it's like, damn, you're right. 100%. I realized
It
that.
was structured so different, and
Yep.
it was great. It was great. I
Oh,
loved.
they were so
I'm
good.
a
They
huge
were supposed to make a new one, and
Yes,
I
they were.
really
Remember
wish
they
they
had that
did.
hint of that remake
Yes.
at a game
Oh,
show like 3 years ago.
man. Yeah, you got that little view of, was it
And I think it was Sony too. So that's
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
probably why it felt
yeah.
better.
I would have died for that. That was. I'm still waiting, and I know that one's coming out for
Me too.
Sony soon for that open world Star Wars game that they have coming up. But I'm
Oh,
skeptical of that.
the rogue stuff or whatever it
Yeah,
is, the hunter rebel thing,
yeah.
whatever.
She's
Yeah,
like a pirate or something that it takes
yeah.
place between Empire and Jedi and stuff like that. And you're just on a. I mean, it
I'm
looks
fine with that. Those
phenomenal.
new Star Wars games are good. To be fair, I didn't really
Yeah,
play the second one. I haven't gotten to it yet. I didn't beat the first one. So
yeah.
again, I have a backlog so long it would blow your mind.
Oh, I know. It's it. I hear you. I still have Rebirth, Final Fantasy Rebirth. I started it. I played through like the first hour and a half or so, and I'm like, this game is immense.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's
that's
like,
what I heard. I heard it's even more like one of the guys that I know who's really like a big name, like in the retro community. He was playing it recently. He's like, "What is with all these side quests?"
dude, it's like I think that, well, it's the number one when I saw it's two Blu-rays. I'm
Oh my
like, oh
god,
my God, it's two Blu-rays filled with stuff.
when's the last time we had that?
Holy
Jesus.
God. And then when I got to started to get through, I'm like, okay, I got to the main part of the big city after the opening, and I'm like walking around the city, and I'm like, my God, you got to go on a quest and play card games with people, and
Oof.
you got to do all this, and then
Sheesh.
before you even continue, and it doesn't let you skip.
Oh
So
my
you
god.
can't just go and like, I'm not doing this. I'm gonna go because you need stuff that you get from these quests
Right,
in
right.
order to go forward. And I'm like, oh
Oh my
dear
god.
Lord, this is gonna be hours upon hours upon hours in this game. And it's like, don't
Yikes.
get me wrong, I love it. It looks amazing, but I'm just like, I have no clue when I'm gonna find the time to
Yeah,
do that.
yeah,
But like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
like the video games are just they blow my mind. I
Oh yeah.
mean, the way they
100%.
look and
The way they
it
look,
just
how
yeah.
far we've come, and you mentioned just before, in television, was your first
Yep.
kind of console, and you might be the first person I tell this to who might not have to Google this, but mine was a
Oh
Vectrex.
my God, my friend had Vectrex. I loved it. I still to
And
this day. Oh my God, wait.
and
There was a game he had Polly. There was the little stick figured girl in it named Polly. And you Pollly, and you just
okay,
hear the little voice because the Vectrex had voice.
it did.
So you would hear
It
the
a
little
little bit,
voice
yeah.
like at the start screen. She'd get taken away, and I think it was a Donkey Kong simulator, kind of like Donkey Kong. And they grabbed the girl, and she'd go end up on the top, and then you'd hear him go, "Oh no, Polly!" And that was the little guy at the bottom. I love Vectrex, dude. I never had
Vectrex
one, but my friend had it.
was fantastic. It was and it had a base game that you couldn't. It was almost like an asteroid type thing. You had to shoot
Yep,
the stuff around.
yep,
And I had like it was a football one. I think the name of the game was called Blitz. They
yep.
had a
Blitz.
bunch of different, things. There was like a Cubert type
Yep.
game, right? The thing was chasing you. Strap yourself in. I still own mine.
Do we really? Does it still work?
The base part of it still works. Now I still
Wow.
have the cartridges, and every time I put like I can't get a cartridge to work, but I'm like, I feel like that's fixable. But at the same time, I'm like, I still have it. I plugged it in, it still works. And I'm like, man, this is a thing. And because my eldest sister was in the military, and then she married military. But back in those days in army, so she was always back and forth Germany or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, yeah.
And she got that was my first. She brought that home for me, and I'm like, cool, this is awesome. And then of course after that was an NES, and then I was off to the races. But Vectrex,
That
Vectrex.
it's funny. I was just there's about an hour from me, I guess. There's a guy who opened up he opened it as one half of it's a comic book store. The other half, which is a lot larger, is all old video games. He honestly has shelves that look like old style stores of
Nice.
brand new in a box games for Atari
Oh my
and
God.
television. He had a brand new in a box Vectrex sitting up in the cellophane on his counter.
What?
Brand new. And I'm like, dude, I went up to him and I'm like, first of all, like the fact that you have all these things is amazing, but where the hell did you find some of this stuff?
Right.
Like what? Like brand new? Like never. I said, is that Vectrex new? And he's like, never touched. I said, so never opened nothing. He said, nope, never open. I'm like, I don't even want to pry, but like, do you spend like a bunch of, and he goes, I'm not going to really talk about it, but he said, I'll be honest, like a lot of it is luck because you find, like he said, the Vectrex, a person came in with a cart of stuff to his place and said, hey guys, can you use any of this? And he said, apparently, I guess he bought it years ago. And he just put it in the garage and never opened it.
That's wild.
And I'm like, God, it's insane. But yeah, it's like it's a heaven for gamers. When I saw all that, I'm like, man, because they have converters now. You can use converters for these HD TVs, and you can play all this stuff on there. And I'm like, oh my God, I was so ready to buy like older stuff, like the Atari 2600 he had was immaculate. Like, oh my God, it was so good.
Takes you down that lane, yes.
It really does. It really does. Oh man, I love it. That's well, there you go. We've been talking for 36 minutes about video games. I love it. Fantastic. Exactly. That's great, man. You know where we come from. This kind of stuff is the thing I like to talk about with people that play Snap, because it's like you've come from somewhere, and most of the time you're coming from a gaming background. We've played games with these characters before in many, many different iterations, whether it be back to an Atari 2600 Spider-Man game where you used to just web on a wall and fall all the time, or, whether you're playing the Batman 89 game on the Genesis that looked freaking amazing for its time, all through. But see, this is where all this stuff, like, and me, being a comic book reader too, when I was a young kid at 5-6 years old, and then growing through all this is the reason why I play this game, and it's what brought me to it. It's like, So what exactly brought you? How long have you been playing Snap, first of all, and when did you and what brought you to the game?
The first part of that question is very easy. Day one global.
Okay, so you were beta or no?
Not beta.
Okay.
Unfortunately, not. And I say unfortunately not beta only because I was unaware that was happening. Right. Yeah. So I would have tried to get in on it, but so day one global, and I had it. You have games you hear about games, and you can pre-register them on in the Google Store or whatever the case on your phone. So I did that, and then the day it came out, it's funny because I actually had. Coincidentally stayed home from work that day, and I was like, I was in the bed. I was like, just hanging out. And then I got the notification popped up on my phone about Snap. It was like, oh, it's out today and it's installed now, right? Because when you do the pre-register, it automatically
installs it on your phone. Yeah.
Like, okay. I was like, all right, let me check this out. And then about 4 hours later, I was like, man, they might have something here, right? Yep. And I haven't missed a day since then. Now, what so seamlessly got me there is because before Snap, I came from Magic. Okay, so been playing Gathering. Yes, Magic. Been playing MTG for now. Granted, I'm not a
90s
lifer. I'm not a lifer MTG guy. Right?
90s or just digital.
I would like to say no, some physical before Arena was a thing.
Okay.
Because Magic Online, everybody understands, is a terrible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's so primitive. Yeah. It's very primitive.
No, the reason I ask is because, like, were you around with the broken cards? So, like, I was around with the Black Lotus and the.
Oh God, I know of them, of course, but I wasn't around playing it in those days.
Okay.
My first foray into Magic was Dominaria. So that was like 5-ish years ago, right? Yeah. And that was when the the big problematic planeswalker from that set was Teferi.
Yes.
Teferi, Hero of Dominaria,
Yep.
where blue-white control could just stall the game out
I
and not play any cards.
hated blue-white control.
They just didn't have to play anything. And then once they got Teferi down, you had to sit and watch and do nothing while they just waited for you to do something, and they could infinitely counter your spells. Okay, we're going down a dark path here, but yeah. So that's what, and so it was physical, and I had played so much. I went to a few pre-releases and, you know, did some Friday Night Magic, had some fun with that. And then once Arena came out, I was playing a lot. I was able to jam like over a 3-year span, I jammed in what felt like 7 years worth of Magic playing. Okay, because I played so much Arena. I was playing it on my computer. I would bring my laptop with me to play before I went to work. Like there was a point in time where I was doing like Lyft full time. So like when I was at the airport waiting for rides, I had my laptop connected to the hotspot on my phone, playing Magic. Okay, so I crammed a lot of Magic into a short space of time. So when I got to Snap, I started playing less and less Magic. Snap came out October 2022, right?
Yep.
So I'm trying to juggle Snap on my phone while playing Arena on my phone, because that was around when the mobile portion of Arena became, because it only had the PC client.
Right.
So I was like, okay. And then by the time November, December rolled around, I wasn't playing Magic anymore. Okay. So, but getting to Snap from Magic, I tell people, I'm like, Snap was so easy for me because of how intricate Magic is. Magic asks you to do 67 things on a turn.
Oh,
They're like, okay, before this is pre-draw, pre-combat, combat. It asks you to do 6 or 7 steps before you get to a whole other turn. So you're like, okay, Magic is a lot of if this, then that, maybe this, sometimes this.
Yeah. That's
right.
Yeah.
So once you've gotten accustomed to all of that and all these different keywords and this and that, and I got to Snap, and I'm like, I had to immediately, it took me about a month or so to retrain my brain, because Snap was not that intricate. Snap is like, okay, this and this, and some of the print on the cards, I'm like, it shouldn't work that way. And I still believe that now. There are cards that get printed now, I'm like, that's not how that should work.
Right.
I come from a game that's like, the text on the card is like, you have to do, like Gambit is a prime example.
Right.
You remember before they changed Gambit, it used to read like, oh, you discard a card and then Gambit does his thing, right? And he destroys a card. Before Gambit got changed, you didn't have to actually discard a card for the effect to happen. And I'm like, that's not how that should work.
Yep.
In Magic, the first thing has to happen before the second thing happens.
Yep. Yeah.
It has to, right? And I looked at Gambit and I'm like, this card isn't working the way it should. And it's funny because it was shortly thereafter that it got changed. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm glad they finally got there, because I'm like, you should have to discard a card for him to get to destroy anything. That's how that should work.
Right.
It's like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, this is a card game. The text on the cards is very important.
Yeah.
So I'm just like,
yeah. Right.
But so that's how I made that seamless transition from Magic to Snap, and how I ended up becoming what people define as a good player. People say I'm a good player, right? So, so I'm like, it's because I played so much Magic, and Jeff Hoagland's a guy who's played a lot of Magic, right? It's like when you have a Magic background or Yu-Gi-Oh or these other games that have all these intricacies, and then you find your way to Snap that's much more simplistic. Now, I'm not saying it's an easy game, but it's simplistic. Okay. Right. It's simplistic in comparison. It's 12 card decks. Like Magic is 60 cards. You have to manage land. You have to figure out how many copies of a particular card to put in the deck before it's unbalanced. You're like, Snap is like, okay, you can have one copy of a card in the deck. That's it. You're like, oh, okay, that's easy. I can build a 12. I can sit right here. I can build a deck in 4 minutes.
Oh, like, yeah. Dude, I used to have, I can remember when my wife and I lived in our apartment. So, and I was, collecting Magic at the time, and I'd have my entire, my binders all laid out on the floor. And here I am. All right, I got to make a deck for the weekend, and I'm pulling cards from each. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like making my deck for Saturday's tournament. But no, you're right. Like it's 100% like the trouble that you had going through through sometimes to
Mhm.
make a deck. Now I made it easier for myself because I was straight black discard. That's all I ever
Hell
played.
yeah.
All I ever played was
Hell yeah.
mine
My
was, now I had
black
broken
control
cards.
brother.
Yes, I had the Black Lotus, I had the Moxes, but my creatures were Hypnotic Specters, the Hymn to Thorax that discarded cards, the
Yep.
Rack back in the day that penalized you if you had 3 or less cards in your
Oh,
hand,
man.
Mind Twist, which discarded the entire hand. My best play
Crazy.
ever in Magic, right? First turn, in my hand, I had a Lotus, so 3 free mana there. I
Yeah.
had a Dark Ritual. I had a Mox, and I ended up able to Mind Twist his entire hand away at a tournament in the first play. I
Oh,
also had
no.
2 racks in my hand. So rack down. So he's taking 6 damage every single turn until he
No.
draws 2 or 3 cards. And it was like he lasted 2 rounds. He's like, I submit.
Yeah,
Like,
that's it. We're done
but
here.
that's all I ever played. I hated blue white because they would stop my creatures from attacking, and then that was the end of it. I was like, yep, nope, and Swords to freaking Plowshares. I hated that card. Hated it. 1 white mana to kill any creature, and they gain life
Jesus.
from it. And you're like,
Yeah, that's
oh,
yeah. I was a big black, player. Like I like, mono black, love that. Love
yes,
black, right? Like Rakdos. I like Golgari.
yeah,
Black blue, yeah, I forget the name of that combo, but that one's all right. Orzhov is fine. Like I do like some vampire stuff here and there. That's
yep.
cool too. Anything black, I'm like, okay, like I'm fine with it, but mono black is just like Duress turn 1
Oh, Duress is wonderful. Yes, yep,
forces so many scoops.
yep,
Like
yep,
it's just like you Duress turn 1, they're like, all right, concede. You're like, well,
yep.
okay, that's
Okay,
let's go
yeah,
to the next
that's
one.
yep. Oh
All right.
man, yeah, that's all I ever. In fact, I think at one point in time, I had an entire so we got in unlimited. So it was alpha beta. We got in unlimited, and then Arabian Nights had just come out about a year or so prior. We got in at Legends. From that point on, I collected every black card in the game. I owned
Nice.
every single black card in the game from every single set.
Nice.
But yeah, I've always been like all through. I never could stand. I would mix a little sometimes. Every now and then I'd mix it with maybe a little bit of blue or maybe a red
Yeah,
spattering here and there for direct damage,
of course.
like lightning bolts and stuff just for damage. But I was always, always, always a black player,
Yeah.
first and foremost. Yeah,
Yeah, I love the whole design of black. I'm either gonna strip cards out of your hand or I'm gonna wait for you to put creatures on the board and just kill them.
just yep.
And then we're just gonna
Drain life, like you could drain life from the opponent for the yeah, dude. It was man. Yeah. I loved it. And I talk about that with players, and I'm glad you brought that up because when you compare it to, when you're talking about that, that's what brought you here. And one of the things I miss, and I'm very, very happy that they announced this, that is going to come in alliances, is the fact that there is no face to face. There's no
Yeah.
face to face with this. And it's like I miss that. That's why I like Glazers running these Snap Judgment League tournaments. I dig that because after we're done playing, I'll usually spend sometimes 10, 15, 20 minutes to a half hour talking to the other person when we're done.
Yeah.
And like getting to know the person a little bit.
Yeah.
And that was how it was. Like, you were going to
Yep.
the store, playing across from your opponent and stuff like that. And that was a lot of the fun for me. Like I'd go to tournaments that were 2 states away from me,
Mhm.
and I'd go and I'd play 2 games and I'd be out of the tournament. What did I do the rest of the time? I'd take my binder around, be like, hey, what do you have for trade, man? Like you
Yeah.
have, you want to trade cards, and you'd meet so many people, and I missed that.
Yep.
And so I'm
And
kind
that's
of glad at least they're bringing chat back, or they're
yeah.
bringing chat into the game, which I'm thrilled by. So,
Sure, of course. And
yeah,
and we get it. Takes a while to get that stuff. And that's also why I like the Brooklyn event that I went to earlier this year, that they had in Brooklyn. It was the equivalent of that. Now, granted, we were all there, we were all hanging out, all in the room, and everybody was, you played your match across from your opponent, right?
yeah,
On your phone or your tablet or whatever the case may be. But it was the equivalent of that. And it can still be done. It's just a matter of getting there, getting it done, or, or
yeah,
or having different people set those things up so they can happen, right? It doesn't have to
yep,
be perpetually this one thing. We can have these tournaments. We're just playing. we just don't need to have any cards scattered about all over the place. Everybody just has their
Right.
device. And
Yeah.
that's it. Like,
Yeah.
but the internet, it's still the same. Like, you got to sit across from the person and go, okay, like you can still go, yeah, you look a little uncomfortable over there. Like,
You're sweating a little. I see a little bit of
that is still a thing. So yeah, it's just one of those things that it just takes more of the community getting it to happen. That's all.
Yeah, I see that Felicity is doing that SnapCon again
And then
down in
SnapCon
Florida.
is happening
So
again this year. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I wish I lived closer. I'm in PA, so it's a hop, skip, and a jump for me, and flights are super expensive now.
Stuff.
But yeah, I heard about the New York ones because
Yeah.
that was you were you at the so that is that the one where Super Tech God was? And yeah,
Yes,
okay,
I was there.
okay,
Super Tech God, Sino was there, and
okay,
that's where I met a few of the other people in the community. Dead Man Falcon, Speedy Snaps. There was a
nice.
bunch of people there. And Dead Man Falcon won. Timmy Trogdor, who's like our resident, who I refer to him as our resident master of the move archetype. I
Oh
watched him
gosh,
take an all-in
God
move deck and
bless.
come in second place with it. He had
That's
Hercules and the whole nine.
oh my
I'm
God,
like, kudos
that's
to you, my
amazing.
friend. That
Right,
is amazing. Like, I came in third. I was using like a dedicated discard deck, but
nice.
I'm like, it was fun. It was a great. And Dara showed up, right? He was there at the
Oh,
end,
that's
like towards the
cool.
end. He was there like when the finals were happening. It was like,
Yeah,
because he's in Brooklyn, so he just kind of swung by for a little bit. He was there for like 20 minutes, half an hour or so at the end, and it was kind of cool. It was cool.
that's awesome.
But yeah, it was a good experience, and they're trying to, and now me being part of like the Power On Gaming team,
Yeah, you
we're,
are part
we're
of Power On.
trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
we're trying to get another event happening in Brooklyn with a little bit more influence from Power On, and where we can set more of the rules and more of the how the tournament is going to take place, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
I'm gonna have to pop in on one of those. I'm not that far from New York. I live
No, I mean, I'm in Maryland, so
yeah.
I
Oh,
drove
okay.
up
Oh,
last
you're
time.
further
So
than me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I drive through PA to get to because I go that way
Yeah,
usually.
I'm in Northeast PA, so I'm like 2 hours from Philly, probably about 2 hours from the border in New York too, so
Yeah.
same way either way.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I'll have to definitely, look into that. I'd love to
Yeah,
do
it
that.
was it was it was fun. It was fun, and like I said, it was just a good experience with everybody being there and
Yep.
just like the environment. It was the same of environment as those tournaments, just like those Magic tournaments, etc. Just less sweaty, right?
Less
Just less,
less smelly. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
much less. Like way less. Not
You know You know what I often wonder though, going back to those days, it's like, why the hell? Now I understand a lot of these stores couldn't get like, they couldn't get big places to play and stuff like that. But my God, like, get some air conditioning in the
yeah,
place at
or
least.
something.
Like, good Lord, man, you
It was-
go in and you're sweating like,
Yeah.
and it's nobody's fault. It's
No.
just like these places were so tiny. A lot of them were comic book stores, and they were
Yes.
very small. And they'd have this back room in the back, and you're playing on these little old ass tables, and you're sweating, and then everybody smells by the end of the day. It's like, oh my
Yep.
God,
Of
yeah,
course.
that,
Yep.
yeah, man. Oh, the good old days. But yeah, it's cool though, dude. I'm glad there's things going on that are like that. Because I think that's part of it. The game is great, but you're seeing a name on the screen, and that's kind of really it. You get an
Yes.
emoji here and there,
Yes.
and that's kind of all you really got as far as that goes. So I'm glad, and we'll talk about that in a little bit anyway with
Yeah.
the alliances and stuff going on. But that's
Indeed.
cool, man. Always great to hear. I to this day, I cry my eyes out every time I think of the fact that that collection of cards that I had now goes on eBay. Some of those cards for like $500,000, and I'm like,
Yeah,
dude,
man.
what was I
Yeah.
thinking? I mean, you never think of this stuff. It's like, when you leave the game, you never even bother. A buddy of mine came into
You
the
don't.
mall and saw me, and he's like, did you ever happen to look up to see what our cards were worth? I'm
Oh
like,
boy.
no.
So
And then I looked and I almost died. I'm like,
torture.
my Lotus was a
Torture.
beta Lotus.
Oh
So
God.
it's going for like 500K. I'm like, dude, my God. Like, so what
Oh
was,
man,
but
bro.
yeah. And I probably sold them for like a couple $100 at the
Oh
time when I
man.
stopped. So
And
it's
that's
like,
where I'm at right now with some of it because I still have, a bunch of my stuff. I don't have a gargantuan collection, but I got enough to fill like a big like tub crate thing,
yep,
right? But
yep,
I'm just like, I have a few copies. I think I have 2 copies of that same said Teferi card we were talking about.
yes.
So I'm like, at some point, I feel like if I hold on to these a bit long enough, not granted, I'm not expecting this to be Black Lotus, but at some point when people look back on like, okay, I need a broken card for
Yeah.
my legacy deck or something, whatever the case may be, for my blue white, and they're like, who's got a copy of Teferi? Like,
Yep. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you never, dude, you never know. Like, I still buy the cards from time to time. Like, I'll get, I haven't played in years, but I'll get some of those. Like, they came out with a Walking Dead one. I
oh, I think I
remember.
remember that.
Yeah, and I remember I bought that. Now they're going for pretty decent amount of money. Like some of the cards from that sets because they're like
Hmm.
very limited sets.
Yes.
That are so. But yeah, man, that's awesome. Well, there you go. Another Magic player coming in. I love it. Talking video games, Magic. Okay, this is amazing. All right, I guess we better get into some Snap
Sure,
stuff
I
a little bit
suppose.
here. You know, so the first thing I want to talk to you about is I want to go because we mentioned it a little bit earlier in the show, but I want to chat with you a little bit about the roadmap thing.
Oh,
So
yes.
this came out or didn't. I'm sitting watching. You talked about
IGN's
it,
fault.
right?
Yeah.
That god awful. I go home. I get home. I turned on I turn on YouTube, put it on the TV. I start watching. I'm like, all right, they should be on any minute now. And I'm like, they should be on any minute now.
Hmm.
I sat through that god awful top 10
Oh
Nintendo
my God.
character, dude. I never felt so embarrassed for people on a stage. I'm
It
like,
was
and
horrible.
the people in the audience weren't even participating at that point. They're like, and I
Nope.
even heard someone chanting, "We want Snap," and I'm like, oh, for God's sake, dude, this is awful. And I'm
Terrible.
like,
It was bad.
and then you find out, I guess it was improvised because Snap was having technical difficulties or something and couldn't make it. But I'm like, oh God, it was awful. I will never. I'm like, I look, IGN does some good stuff. They rate games okay. They do some good videos, but that was awful.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I find out, well, it's popped up on their Discord.
Yep.
So it's
And they
like
had it available.
it was available anyway. So what was your when you saw this? And you ran through it, and we saw what came to mind when you read over all this, because this was, look, and I'm sure you see this, you stream the game, so
Yes.
being realistic, right? People have seemed like, and I've seen it, where they're a little bit off put lately because of the monetization, because
Mhm.
of the just some other things, right? And so everybody, I think, including myself, was hoping and praying we were getting now I'm not talking the Deadpool diner, but I'm talking a brand new thing in this game. And then when you went up and down this, and you're like, and you see draft mode in concept, but that in concept thing scares you now because that may never happen anyway. So
Right.
yeah, what were your initial thoughts on all this? And I think before you go, that the Deadpool's diner thing, now that I know what it is after reading so many dev comments, because they got so many questions,
Hmm.
they're giving away a free card.
Yes.
Why not lead off with that?
I don't know.
Why don't you start with that
I
and
don't
say,
know.
hey, we have this new game mode where we are giving you guys a free card. And the only other time they did that was Kitty. So why not start with that? But yeah, what are your thoughts on all this?
Okay. So the first thing, I'm like, okay, the Deadpool's diner. I didn't. It's funny because enough people have talked about it, and we were talking about it in our, Power on Discord and everything. And I'm fine. I'm like, I feign on calling it a new mode. In my brain, it reads as a limited mode, but
Yep.
whatever. Um, it's you're getting a free card from this. That's really all I have for that. Like, you're getting
Yeah.
a free card. I don't have oh, that's terrible. I just have okay, you're getting a free card from this, right? Not
Yeah.
a variant, a whole
Yeah. It's
card,
it's an
right?
actual card that you don't have to spend tokens or credits or open for. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'm good with that. Does it sound like a reskin of Conquest? Sure. It
Oh, yeah,
does
oh,
in a
yeah,
way.
no doubt.
But and I don't love that, but some of us were talking. I'm more if it's like a one-off battles, I'm good with that. I don't want another conquest type thing that I have to grind through. I'm not
Right.
doing that because this is why I don't play a lot of conquest now.
Yep.
Um, I'm fine with that. Free card, great. A lot of the other stuff here outside of leagues we already know about. A lot of the other stuff outside of alliances all just kind of sounds like the same thing. Right? Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or just in different parts of the
Yeah, you're right. Like I don't get it because, like I said, now everybody was like I said, the devs question and stuff blew up. Everybody's asking them all this kind of stuff. Well, because they didn't really even go into like how does this diner thing work. So they went through. They made paragraphs. I got them all today of people saying how it works, and then all of a sudden we get a comment saying, "Well, yeah, character mastery is done, but because everybody
Yeah.
voiced their concerns about it so much, we may be rethinking that." And then they talk about getting the what is it, the character albums now.
Yeah.
We're going to get albums now that are character based. So you're going to be able to collect the Wolverine and Deadpool ones are going to be the first two. So you're going to, if you have a bunch of collection of variants for that album, you're going to get stuff for that. You're going to get those new little, what are those things called? The little emojis that you could put on things when you like or dislike it on the game board. So, but again, why not mention that stuff? Like, you would think, let's mention some good things here because this, I get it. It was toned down. I don't think they wanted to put too much on there.
No, they didn't because all the previous ones have a lot of stuff on there. And a lot of it just kind of falls by the wayside. So this one is a little bit lighter in what's on it, and I get that.
Yeah.
And the Deadpool's diner, you got to take advantage. The movie's coming out.
Fine.
Oh,
no doubt. Sure.
You have to tie that in. I get that.
Oh yeah.
That's just relevant, smart business. You don't have a choice. You kind of have to, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you have a game that has the Marvel property on it.
Yep.
You have to take advantage of whenever there's a new movie. You just have to. Okay.
Yep.
I would bet that's even in the contract.
Oh, so for sure. Marvel probably wrote that in. They're like, yeah, you need to advertise the game during this time.
Correct.
Yeah, and really think about it. This is the first Marvel movie we've gotten in a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So normally it'll help games when
usually
you see that. Yeah. Like people will be like, oh, there's a Marvel movie coming out. I'm going to check out this Marvel game. But we haven't had that. So now, you've got to take advantage of this because now we're not getting another one until next year.
Correct.
So
I like alliances. Okay, I like alliances when I heard about it. I like the fact that, in theory, once it comes out, we're getting, alliance competitions. That's great, right? So you get your team together. It's like, and you're fighting for resources. You're playing the game. You're doing the things that you're doing in the game anyway. So you're getting more resources from that. Cool. I have no problem with that. I like that. I like the team aspect that brings that together. It's great. Now, the elephant in the room, draft mode. That's one of my biggest selling points for this in general, because I'm one of the people that are screaming from the rooftops about the game needing a draft mode.
Oh, I love it too. Yeah, absolutely.
So, the fact that it's in concept, scary, but at the same time, the wording on how they describe it, is contradictory to what they've said in the past, but that's neither here nor there. Like, oh, we've always been thinking about draft mode since the game came out.
Didn't they say we would never have a draft mode at one point?
100%,
I thought so.
Yes, they did. Every time anybody mentioned it, they're like, oh, that's not really something we're thinking about doing. Oh, but now this says you've been thinking about it since the game came out. Okay. All right. Those two things can't be true in that instance. That's not how that works. So I'm 100% on board for that. I would love for that to be a little bit closer than quote unquote in concept,
right?
Because the game desperately needs a mode, right? And I feign on using the term new mode because Conquest it's like a mode-ish type of part of the game, because ladder's not a mode, right? Ladder's just how you play the game,
right?
That's just how you play the game, period.
Yep.
Conquest is like an odd in between. It's like, here's another thing in the game where you can, and it's a grind that nobody wants to do, right? People just do it they get the variant or they get the resources from the track to spend the medals on getting more credits, gold, or and a couple of variants. That's all they do. That's all people is because there's no payoff for Conquest.
Yeah, who
the
cares
Infinity
about
Border
that Infinity
is not
Border.
a payoff.
Yeah, nobody cares. Yeah, nobody cares, man.
Nobody cares.
They even came out with that new one that I actually think kind of looks better anyway, with the blue and gold on it. So it's like, who cares?
Hit the spotlight card. You get that one. Get that avatar.
It's like, who cares?
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
So, and that's the problem with Snap, which is why I think draft needs to be much closer to being in the game, because there are two ways to play Snap: ranked, ladder, and conquest. The problem you run into is that if you're a player and you get to infinite quickly. And I'm a bad example. I play every day. I play a lot. I'm a streamer. I'm so many other things. I get to infinite second, third, first day sometimes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm like, okay, now what? If I'm a player and I'm like, okay, now there are people like me that aren't streamers, right?
Yep.
Now what? If I have no desire to grind the ranked ladder, because if I do, then what? If I get to rank 1, what do I get other than bragging rights?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Great. So you need to do, now, and granted, Leagues is coming, and Leagues has, thankfully, they took the pay to win aspect out of it. Christ, because that was a terrible idea from the
Oh
beginning.
yeah, that was awful.
So
Yeah.
you give people a free way to enter, you give people a paid way to enter. Perfect. That makes sense. Hopefully that helps bridge this gap. I think Leagues is the gap bridge between now and draft mode.
Draft mode.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I would have no desire to play the game there. Otherwise, if I'm a player that's like, okay, I hit infinite, do I grind the ladder? No, I don't know for what. And like, okay, for nothing. Okay, do you want to play Conquest? I mean, I'll play it. I'll get a couple of things, and then you get the things, and you're like, do you really still want to keep playing Conquest? You're like, no, not really, because that's a grind for no reason, with no real payoff. So you're like, okay, what else can I do in the game? Nothing. That's not good. Okay, and coming from a game that has other things to do. Two-headed giant, Magic has that. It has draft mode. It has all these other things that it does. That's like that you can go to a Friday Night Magic. You could do a draft mode. You could do the main. Like you could do this. You could do that. And it's like they have things for you. Snap is like Hearthstone has a damn draft mode. So I'm like, y'all need a draft mode in this game. Like whatever you've said in the past, whatever the kind of thing you're trying to say, oh, people don't really want that. Pump the brakes. Yes, they do. Because everybody does. Everybody who's ever played a card game ever knows, draft mode's great.
Yeah, I mean, it 100%. Like I really don't understand why they didn't think about it, but you're right. Like when you look at all this, and they even, they were, I don't know. Like I'm talking about like RSM, right? Because you have RSM coming out. RSM is going to be the closest to a draft mode you're going to see.
Yeah,
right?
until it actually hits. Yeah.
But it's going to be fun. And I know a lot of people look forward to it. I know I am. I'm looking forward to that card. It's going to be crazy. Yes, but it's going to be fun. It's a new way to play the game. And I'm sure, guys like yourself that are streaming the game, that's fantastic. Because you could say, hey, I'm doing an RSM night, man. We're just going to play RSM all night. We're just going to see how the ball rolls, what we get and stuff like that. Draft is just fun. It just is. I go to tournaments and it kind of, it kind of shows you as a player how actually good you are. Because it's great having these decks, right? And so many people, and there's nothing wrong with it. In Snap, there's a limit of so many cards there are, right? So right now we're in Profex Cannonball meta, and people can just net deck. They're like, this is the best deck there is. I'm just going to use this, and so this is all you see. Yep. But when you draft, okay, now you're going to separate. You're going to separate good from bad.
Of course,
because you're going to make a good situation out of getting a deck maybe that has M'Baku in it. You're gonna make that work,
right? Exactly.
But 100%.
And then you get to separate it from a limited standpoint because, granted, yes, I understand. In comparison to other card games, Snap's card pool is this big, right?
Yes.
You're talking about Snap's whole card pool is like a Magic set. So
yeah, you're right. Yeah, it is like one set. Yeah, you're not kidding. And they used to come out 4 times a year, if not
right.
more.
Right. So like I get that. So what you do is you take your draft mode and you're like, okay, this draft mode, this one here, this is a series 3 only draft mode, right? Or up to series 3 or whatever the case may be. Then you can start to play around with that. And then you're like, okay, this is the pool you're drafting from, period. Good luck. Like, and you could do stuff like that. But again, yes, they have to get to that. So it's a concept. The fact that it was even on this was already exciting enough for me. I was like, okay, let's just accelerate where it is on the on the map, please. Because let's get that. Let's get that going. We need that because
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think it's I'm glad I saw it because when I went out and did predictions for what this was going to be, I said, God, I hope it's a new game mode that we're going to
yeah,
see because
yeah,
listen, we it's just something we need. There were people that put posts out there that were asking them, like someone even came this really long post. I can't remember who did it, but sent it to the devs and said, hey, so I want to know, like, are you focusing on another game right now and not
everybody's
and
talking
not
about
really
lower
doing
content,
much for
right?
Snap? I'm like, oh boy,
Mm-hmm.
if that's the general idea, that's bad for your
It is
game.
bad. It is bad.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the kind of press and conversation around your game that you don't want, right? It's like,
no,
especially now, there's been those leaks, those little tidbits of information where it's like, Second Dinner is possibly a thing that Second Dinner is working on the Lorcana client, like
yes,
an actual. I'm like, okay, well, that's not great in a sense where y'all haven't 100% figured this game out.
right.
You're
Don't move
still
on
now
to
granted,
something when
it's
you say,
great,
right,
but
yeah,
there are still things that it's like, "Oh, wait, yeah, we gotta clean that up, and we gotta do this. We're not 100% there yet, X, Y, and Z." And you're on to another game? That's
that's not good. Red flags, man. I look, I've said it many times on here. I went through this with Marvel Battle Lines that came out about five no Black Panther.
Mhm,
And it was a card game, mobile card game. It looked like a board of almost like a bingo board in a way. There are spaces,
mhm,
and you'd have these cards that you'd have to open packs for, and you'd put the characters you put down in the spaces, and they would have these little battles and lines against the other cards that were there, and basically
right.
who won. But I went through it, and I liked it. And again, you're talking in Marvel IP, so right then was Infinity War. So, man, everybody wanted Thanos, right?
Of
Well, to
course.
get Thanos,
Oh
you
god.
had to open these packs because they were 5 card packs. You had to open. He was so rare. I ended up having to open 20 packs at $20 a piece.
Jesus Christ.
$20 a piece, right? And I'm like, I just killed, God forbid my wife found out about that because I was like, I'm sinking money, and then coming down the line, you're seeing Black Panthers coming at this. Like, oh, we have a Black Panther set coming. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. 2 days later, we're closing down the game
Oh my god.
like that. I woke up one morning and said, well, we're shutting down this game. I'm like, oh my God. So, like, that's always in the back of
Yep,
my mind
of
because
course
look,
it is.
the reality is how many mobile games like this survive? How many stick around for? I mean, look, you have games like Candy Crush that's been around for freaking ever, but that's few and far between.
It is. It and it's funny you mention all of this because Snap can go. I mean, it's can go one of two ways, quite literally, right? It can end up like Hearthstone, which for a lot of people would be great. Hearthstone's been running for a long
Yeah,
time,
going for
right?
a while. Yeah,
But again, Hearthstone figured out to put those things in. Like they even just released what, like a duo mode,
yep,
right? Like, but it's had a draft mode. It's like
yep,
you need those things to extend the longevity of your game if you want it to
yes,
last longer than 2.5 years.
yeah,
So it's like, okay, maybe you might get there. And if you don't, and then if you jump to another game and there's a danger zone that this is headed towards if they're not careful. Granted,
yeah.
game making a lot of money. Yeah, it is.
Oh, for
It's making a
sure.
crap
Yeah.
ton of money.
Oh,
But
I
you
have a
also
graphic actually for that. I'm not sure if it's even up on here. I
they
I think I had it up
it's
on the thing. Let me
it's
see.
making a crap ton of money.
Here it
But
is.
yes, that one. And here's the problem that Snap has. If all the content creators for Snap woke up one day and decided, you know what, we're not playing Snap anymore. We're not buying anything in Snap anymore. What would that look like for the game?
Oh, very bad.
Right?
You're already starting to kind of see it a little bit. Like we had our first
What if your
casualty. Like
Dexters and your Cozies and your Jeffs and your you know what I'm saying? Like, all your super tech gods and all these
yeah,
people decided,
yeah,
nah, we're just gonna not buy anything and stop
yeah.
playing that. What if all your whales just decided, nah, we're not gonna
Oh, they're
bunch of whales
screwed.
that aren't super big content creators, right?
Yep.
They just decided, you know what? Nah, that number, that dark green bar
Going
would
to way
be
down.
a real light green bar.
Yeah,
Real light green. Right.
yeah.
So I'm just like, is that what you want? But you have to be very careful with that.
Yeah.
And the more and more you perpetuate the narrative of, okay, we don't really need a new mode. We'll get there when we get there. You're gonna start to see those numbers diminish
Yeah.
because people need other things to do within the game other than play ladder
Yeah. Yeah.
with no
Yeah.
payoff. Right? If you
Yeah.
told me like, oh, if you got to top 5,000 by the end of the season, you get this amount of resources or whatever. If you get to top 1,000, you get this as a reward. Okay, then you give people a reason to grind ladder other than bragging rights,
Right.
which most people don't care about.
Yeah, like who cares? Yeah, you're right. Somebody you get to that point. You get through it to the end, right? You get to the ladder or to the infinite ladder, and you're like, yeah, I don't care anymore.
You
And then
don't.
they just mess around.
You
And even
don't, because
a lot of creators even do that. They get to the
that's what
thing, they're
happens.
sitting in like the thousands, and then they're like, yeah, we're just gonna make non-meta
We're
decks and just mess
and
around and have a good
that's
time playing.
pretty much what happens. Like a few seasons ago, I got to the top 200 at once time, right? And a couple times I've been top 1,000. And getting there, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool. It's fun." I passed when I got to top 200. I passed Jeff on the global leaderboard and the
That's
US
cool.
leaderboard. I
Yeah.
passed Jeff. Right, I passed all these people, Educated Collins, whatever. I played a game. The game matched me up against KM Best one game, right?
Oh man, yeah.
That season. So that's how high I got. So I'm like, okay, interesting. And then the next season and the season after, I'm like, oh, okay, you hit infinite day one, day two. And I'm like, I don't, what was the point? I
Right.
got there. And yes, did it help my credibility as somebody who plays the game a lot and a streamer, and people come in my streams and they're like, oh, you're a high elo player. And I'm like, okay, I don't really know what that means, but okay, thank you. But but it's like, other than that, because again, as a streamer, it kind of helps, right? Because it adds a little bit of in your tool belt of credibility. You're like, okay, people look at you and they're like, oh, okay, you're good at the game. Like,
Right.
because
Yeah.
there is a contingent of people that watch people play because they're better than they are.
Yeah.
So that, and they want to see that. So, and I understand that 100%. But most of the time, especially now, I get to the point, I hit hit infinite. I'm like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,000. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, what are we doing? And then I'm just playing. And then we're just
Yeah.
doing whatever. We're messing around. We're
That's
playing.
it.
I'm trying
Yep.
to build decks. We're just having fun. People come in the chat. We're doing chat drafts. We're doing whatever. And it's just like, all right, I'm sitting at like 12,000 or like, I don't care. And even at that number, people are like, man, that's so much higher than I ever get. And I'm like, oh, okay. I won't
Yep.
tell you how high I've been then. I'll
Right.
just
No, you're 100% right. Like, and I think that, and I just saw too that they added a ladder to that Deadpool thing. There's actually a title now you can
really.
win. Yeah, so if you get, I think they said top 100 gets a Deadpool and Wolverine title.
Interesting.
So I'm like,
Well,
okay,
it's
so there's something to
not
play for.
nothing.
Yeah, so it's great. It isn't great, but it's something to
No,
play
no,
for
no,
anyway.
no, not
But
great. Resources would be better.
I always said, like,
Give me like
you know, if you,
5,000 tokens.
right there you go. Like if you're grinding like that and you're up in, oh my gosh, I don't even know where we even stop, but if you're in like the top 10
Mm-hmm.
on ladder, there should be something, some
Should be
kind of reward or
100%.
something for getting there.
100%. If
The,
if they came out and be like, everybody who gets the top 10, we're giving them 6,000 tokens, right? The effectively cost of a new card, right?
and then like the
I
number one
wouldn't be
player
mad at
gets
that because
10
I'm
or
not
something
trying to
like
get up there.
10K. Yeah, like who cares? If they're that good that they can
Yeah.
do that, hey, go to it. Look,
Who
I've
knows?
never hit infinite once, not once. I got to 99 one time, it's the closest
Nice.
I got, but I've never made it. But that's because I'm confined to the fact that I can't play as much. I don't have the hours to play.
And that's the other part of it that I tell
Yeah,
people. People are like, well, how much is it as a time investment?
it's a lot.
Well, a lot of it actually,
Yeah,
right?
it's a lot.
And I told people, like, in those days when I was really grinding it a lot, I was playing mostly on my phone. Like I play
Yeah,
more now on my PC, which also means that I'm playing less though.
yeah,
So I'm just like, yeah, well, plus I like so many other things. And I had some great conversations with some people who are really in the know in the business world in general
yeah.
that are kind of like, they're like, it's good that you have a pivot because Snap is teetering. I'm
Mm,
like, regardless of the numbers, right? They're like, they don't really know how to run a business. I'm like, I'm like, that's interesting. That's interesting
yeah,
to say because this
yeah.
money that they're making makes it seem like they know what they're doing, right? 100%. But that number, I feel like, is inflated by the fact that there's just a lot of whales that exist within the game. And
There's a
they're just
lot of
like
whales
they're
in
gonna
there.
buy the $100 bundles and they're not selling the $100 bundles. People are buying the $100 bundles. There's a difference, right? So like, and you as a salesperson, and you've been spent a lot of time in
Okay.
retail, you understand the difference.
Yep, yep,
So I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, which is why I've started to lean a lot into my other things because I put those every time I have a stream, I'm doing Snap. I like to keep reminding people like, hey, Thursdays I do retro stuff. This other
yep.
day I might do something else. Like if you guys like other games that aren't Snap, I'm your guy. I'm
Yeah,
great for that. Like come check me out, whatever
yeah.
the case may be, because
Smart.
I'm I'm not one of those people that I'm like, I'm all in on Snap or like I put Snap in my name and
Right.
no, no,
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
never all in on one particular thing because first and foremost, I'm a gamer above everything else.
Right.
I'm a gamer, and then everything else falls under a branch. Am
Yep.
I is Snap doing the most for me right now as a content creator and helping me build a foundation and growing off of it? Yes. Is it the end all be all? No.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really the way you have to look at it because if not, and if you're doing the stuff like that full time, you have to be very very flexible, and
Yes.
that's what now you're seeing already. Like the thing is, in the last 2 years for this game, right? There's been no other Marvel IP things going on except for
No.
the
Strike
Spider-Man
Force.
game, but that's different. That's a one-player game, right?
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
a little bit different. Now all of a sudden, you have your first IP thing, Marvel Rivals, being shown. First thing, and then all
Mhm.
of a sudden, what are you seeing? All the creators. Hey, I've got Marvel Rivals keys to give out.
Because Imma tell
We're
you
going.
what, most of the Power On crew, we were playing we were all in the alpha, and
Yep.
we were all playing a crap ton of Rivals,
Yeah.
and everybody's talking about like, "Yeah, man, I don't when Rivals comes out, I might be playing a little bit less Snap, man, or a
Yeah.
lot less." I don't
Yeah,
I'm like,
it'd be
"Yep."
the same, but see, that's what you're talking about with gamers. It'd be the same thing for me. The Marvel games that I loved the most, I think, were the games that were called Marvel Ultimate Alliance. I was
Oh
all
my
over
god,
them. I
love those
loved
games.
those games, every
Those
one
are
of them,
great.
even the Nintendo one, which wasn't all that great, but I
No.
loved them all. If they ever came out with a new version of that or something like that down the road, man, I'd be playing the crap out of it because
Yeah,
I
and then
loved them.
Epic Games just gave,
Yes.
they had free, Midnight Suns for free, so
Yep. Midnight
that's
Suns was
nice.
great. Yeah, like and that's you come out, give me a Marvel RPG. Oh my god, forget it. You'll never see me. But yeah, you're right. Like and I think part of what people don't understand looking at this graphic too. Yes, they're making 12.5 mil. Guess how much the Marvel IP probably costs them per
This
month?
is what people don't understand. People are like, "Oh, well, yeah, they're making a lot of money." I'm like, "You know how much they're probably paying for that IP?"
Yeah,
It's like,
millions and millions of dollars.
they're
So
spending
yes.
most of their net on that IP, I bet
No
you.
doubt.
So I'm like,
No doubt. That has to be 10 mil.
"Of
Has to be. So
gotta
then if you
be."
subtract that, you're looking at $2 million.
Right.
So
People are like,
yeah.
"Oh, they're making so much money." I'm like,
Yep.
If this game wasn't Marvel, if it was just no name Snap and that
Yep.
was the number,
Yep.
okay, well, now we're talking about something.
Right.
It's Marvel Snap. They
Right.
got all these characters, they got all these feels, they got all
Yep.
this stuff. It's like they're paying that back. They're paying for that IP big
No
time.
doubt. No doubt, man. And that's the thing. That's where all these other games and you're seeing there, right? Like Magic and Hearthstone, they all own their own IP. There is
Yes,
no IP they have to pay for. So that's a
correct.
big thing that, yes, maybe they're down there. But
Right,
remember, Magic's making, what is it, almost 5 mil. Magic's making that straight 5 million. They're not
right.
paying it back to
No,
Disney.
no.
So
Wizards of
that's
the Coast been around for a long time and
right,
will be around making magic
right.
for a long time from here.
If they were smart, honestly, and I was thinking about this, since this particular type of style of game has gone over so much, they should really look at Warner Brothers and try to get DC on board
They
and
should,
and have both big
especially
giant
seeing how
comic companies.
quickly Dual Force crashed and burned.
Yes.
Like
Oh,
it,
that was
it's
horrid.
and
That
to be
was
fair, I
so
think the
bad.
biggest part of why that happened was because games like that have, in my opinion, games like that, especially coming into the landscape now,
Yep.
have to kind of start mobile first. Starting PC first is a
Yeah, that was
big
stupid.
ask.
No, that was stupid. You're right. Mhm.
That's a big ask.
Yeah, that was dumb.
Because most of people got into Snap because it's like, oh, it's mobile, it's on your phone. Oh, great. I'm out in the waiting room, I'm in the bathroom. They
Yep.
got a whole damn title that says playing on the toilet. Like,
Yep,
come on.
they do.
Like,
Yeah.
they know what this is. So,
Yep.
like, and then they're like, okay, you guys really like this. Okay, now we'll give you a PC client.
Yeah.
Okay, you get there. You don't start at PC client and
Yep.
work your way backwards. No, that's not how you do that.
Yeah,
That's not how you do
they
that.
really screwed that up. But yeah, I mean, if they were smart, they would. And now look, you know that there's going to be. So you know, Disney, who owns all those licenses, right? They own the license to Star Wars. You don't think they're looking at this and being like,
And everybody, Pokemon, right? Because we're getting that Pokemon game
Yep.
allegedly still this year. That is like they looked at Snap and they were like, okay, because they had that mobile Pokemon game a couple years
Yep.
ago. One of the guys I work with was talking about it. He's like, yeah, it didn't do so well. He's like, so they're already making a new one. I was like, yeah, but they're designing it like how Snap is designed.
They're
Trust me, it'll
all
be
going to follow suit. So that's what I
Snap has
said.
set the precedent for what those games should look like from here out.
Yep.
I will say that much at least.
Yeah.
So, and somebody like me, I like card games. I like all this stuff.
Yep.
If the Pokemon game plays anything like Snap, I'm probably gonna be playing some Pokemon.
Yep. Yep.
And they talking about giving away 3 free packs every day. Like,
Yep.
I'm not getting any free cards from Snap every day.
That's good. And that's what I'm saying. It goes back to the original discussion we had. Like, it's when you're a gamer, you don't usually end up getting settled in one thing and play nothing else. It's just how it goes.
Because that's not how gamers are, right?
Yeah.
And I was just talking about this the other day with somebody. I'm like, there's a difference between a gamer and somebody who plays one particular game. So somebody who's like, oh, I play Candy Crush. Like, that's it. That's all I play. Like, I'm a gamer, right?
Yep.
You're somebody who plays Candy Crush.
Right. You're a
like,
Candy Crush player. Yeah.
You're not a gamer. You're a Candy Crush player.
Yep.
And that's fine. It is a game, but that doesn't in turn make you a gamer. Right? Like, you got to be all over the place. Play a little of this, play a little of that. You're bouncing around this console, that console, your PC, mobile. Like, yes, you can be a mobile gamer, right? That's a thing, right? But other things as well. Like, but it has a landscape. Like the Star Wars game that just came out, as a matter of fact. I downloaded it. It's all right so far. I would love it if you could use a controller, which I haven't tested to see if it could work yet. But the Star Wars Hunters. So it's like an arena style.
Oh yeah, it's
thing,
like
right?
It's almost like Overwatch. I played it for a little bit.
Except it's a little bit more fun, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe because it's Star Wars and maybe because it's not as like hindered on, oh, it's a disability and that ability. It's a little bit more straightforward.
It is. It's a little. They made it a little easier, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I said, I would love for if you could use a controller, but again, I haven't tested whether or not that's possible. But I digress. It's stuff like that. It's like, okay, you play a little of that, you play a little of something else, and like, yeah, you can be a mobile gamer, and we can consider you a gamer, just as long as you're not like, oh, I play Candy Crush, and that's all I play. Even if you're somebody on a console, you're like, all I play is NBA 2K. Well, that's you're not really a gamer. You're somebody who plays 2K all the time.
Right? Yeah.
Do you play fighting games, racing games, anything
Madden,
else? No.
You know, I'm a Madden guy. I play Madden all year long, even after football season. Yeah.
Right. You play Madden. You're not a gamer. You play Madden. Can you play anything else? Do you want to play anything else? No. Okay. Well, you're not a gamer. You're somebody who plays Madden.
Yeah. It's you're right, and that's the thing. That's why, you know, to keep existing the way that they are, they have to start appealing to that. They have to make sure, because like you said, you know, look, I got nervous when I saw Drew Berry quit, and I'm like, uh-oh. When I saw that happened, and he was all in and stuff like that. Now, I mean, I watched his video, and he said that he didn't hate. He loved to get a game still and everything. He just got burned out, and he wanted to do other things. Well, a lot of people may start to do that too, man. Of
course,
you know,
because you get burned out when there's only one perpetual thing to do in the game.
Yep.
Period. And then every week you get a new card, and you're like, okay, is this card any different? Does it change the meta? Does it do anything? No. Okay, on to the next one. And you're just on the same grind ladder. You're not doing much. Conquest is a grind that nobody wants to do or has time for like that. So,
No,
you have to be very careful, because the more games that come out that look and sound and play a little like Snap, that have these other IPs attached to them is very dangerous for second dinner in this game.
That's
Right?
what I
Because you're
said.
talking about Pokemon, you mentioned Star Wars. Could you imagine a Star Wars game that looked like this, just with different cars?
I was
Come
thinking
on,
that. Could you
like what?
imagine like similar to Snap with Star Wars
Oh
characters?
my
Oh,
god!
and they have countless amounts, just
Right.
like the Marvel does. They have
Star Wars has
countless
got
amounts of
so many
characters you
characters,
can
so many
do.
obscure
Yep,
characters, so many characters that don't have a name. That
yep,
it droid 2463
yep,
all from the side,
yep.
like yeah, put them in the game. Like
Imagine they'd have like a ship mode or something where it's not just dude. You can't, and you can. Yeah, as I said, you can't tell me that they're not. Disney owns Marvel. Disney's probably the ones they're paying for Marvel the property, so they're seeing this. Their designers are seeing that. Okay,
yes,
hey, those guys are doing pretty good with that
hey,
snap
go
thing.
make a Star Wars
So
game.
let's go. Exactly. How hard is it for like a CEO to be like, guys, you see that? Yeah, go make
Yeah,
that with Star
we
Wars
need
stuff.
you to take a couple of your guys from that team. We're gonna start another team over here. Take a few of those guys. Y'all go over here and make that same thing. Just put the Star Wars
Yep.
skin on it.
Oh, it's
Go
going to
ahead, go do
happen.
that.
Like you're going to see now that they've established a precedent, especially for like fast games.
Yes,
Play like 3-4 minute games. People
that's
are
what
going
people
to
want.
start to do it.
That's
Yep.
what people want.
Yeah.
And the more and more properties that you have available to do that with, that's going to be, like I said, whether it's Pokemon, whether it's Disney eventually gets to, again, whether it's they do something with Star Wars, or again, I don't see any way that the Lorcana app, the Lorcana game, the official digital game,
Yep.
doesn't look very similar to Snap.
Oh,
There is no
yeah.
way.
Yeah.
There's no way it doesn't.
And that is so freaking, dude. We started selling those cards in Best Buy. Oh my God, we can't
Yeah.
keep them in the store.
No.
That is so
No.
popular right now.
Because you're like, okay, well, what's bigger than Marvel? Disney.
Yep.
As a whole, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, because everybody knows Disney.
Yep.
People know
Listen,
Marvel,
yep.
but you play some of the characters start to get really obscure, right?
Yeah, they do.
In Disney, even when you start to deep dive, most people still know some of those characters.
Yep. Yep. And the thing is, the young kids know them. The young kids are going to want to play. And yeah, that's
how many more people are going to be like, oh, I'm going to go play Lorcana. It looks like Snap. Let's play Lorcana. Next thing you know, Twitch is overrun with Lorcana.
Yep.
Because look, what's the average viewership on a slow day for Snap? 2,000 people.
Yep.
And they're all in Dara's chat. So like, right? So when it's 12,000, like literally it was 12,000 yesterday, 7,000 people were in Dara's chat. So what happens if Dara stops playing Snap?
And goes,
then what does Snap look like?
Right. You're up the creek. Yeah, that's 100%. No doubt, man. That's why I said they've got to, and that's what go back to the draft stuff and what we were talking about earlier. They've got to change things up. They got to stay on top of this card stuff, I think, too, because honestly, like you were saying, look, we're in a very bad kind of oppressive meta now with this Profix Cannonball crap.
And we got here because of Hella, and I don't care what anybody says. Hella, so we got here because of that.
Yeah, like, but see, these are things that like they boggle my mind because like leading to the Professor X stuff because it came from Hella and so much comes from Hella. My God, change Hella.
How have we gotten? How has she managed to just go about for this long, unfettered, untouched?
Oh gosh.
And I agree because me and Parry go back and forth about this, right? And I agree with the precedent as a card game player for many years. I agree with the precedent and the understanding of, well, find the thing that beats this thing. I 100% agree with that, right? Because if there's a lot of the times a thing that exists in the game that you can find to beat said other thing. 100%, right? What beats Hella? It started at the trial and error was, well, what beats Hella? They're like, okay, well, if you Cosmo, you can stop the Hella. Okay, well, that's too finicky. That doesn't really work the way you want it to. Okay, well, what's next? And you're like, okay, well, we can clog the board. Okay, well, that kind of works if you get it to work, but also finicky. And it lost to what was a top tier deck at the time, Destroy. So, and everybody was playing a crap ton of Destroy, and I'm a Destroy player. Destroy is a little light right now, but when Clog was big because it was trying to beat Hella, Destroy was feasting. Okay. So then you're like, okay, well, Clog loses to Destroy, and a lot of people playing Destroy, and we have to play Clog to beat Hella. Well, what else can we do, right? Tribunal. Okay, Tribunal works, but that's a glass cannon. If it loses big. When it wins big. Okay.
Yep.
You're like, okay, well, that's finicky. What else we got? All right, well, Prof just got nerfed. He's a 5-3, and we're taking him down to a 5-1. And then I was in my brain, I turned and went, oh, so Prof just got buffed. Because you take him to 5-1 immediately means he works for Ravona. That means those decks don't have to play Psylocke, Wave, Electro, any of that nonsense anymore. Throw it out the window. Now they can just play Ravona. And oh, by the way, there's a laundry list of cards they can play with Ravona, right? So like, oh, so that gets better immediately. So Prof, the 4-1 was a buff. So I'm like, huh. And then once everybody figured that out, they're like, oh, well, Prof beats Hella. And now here we are. And then we're off to the races. It got from bad to worse once Cannonball hit the game. Yeah. So that was what made it worse. Because then Cannonball turned into Old Goliath, where you're like, well, I just get to shut off whatever it is that you're about to do. Now, of course, they have to have prio, right? So if they don't, if they have if you have prio as the non-prof player, you're kind of in a bad place because you put your big thing down and they cannonball it to all hell and you lose. Now, if the prof player has prio and you haven't put anything down yet that's really huge, they're in a tough spot. Because they just play the cannonball, it's 8 power, and then what? You play a Red Hulk that's 17 and you get to win. But that's a back and forth you get to play, but more times than not, you just lose anyway, right? But it beats Hella. But Hella was this problem that went unchecked for so long, still unchecked.
I don't understand why they don't want to touch that card.
It gets to do too much for too little. And you and I, and you know very well, in a card game, a card can't shoot well past its ceiling so easily. Because the solitaire Hella deck, as I like to call it, gets to play like 3 cards and just output like between 50 and 70 power. Like, how is that okay? People are like, well, the RNG. I'm like, what RNG? I was like, here's the RNG in that Hella deck. Hope that Corvus Glaive doesn't hit Hella.
That's it.
The RNG.
That's the only drawback. That's it. That's
because if it doesn't, they've won.
Yep. You just know it too. Like if you see that the blade come down turn 1 or the dark or the Black Knight come down,
right away.
All of a sudden you hear boop and they snap. You're like, I'm out.
You're done.
You're out of there. Have it. They're not bluff snapping you.
No,
and the only chance you have is, like you said, is if they discord the Hella or discard
the Hella. And they also snap that once they've drawn on turn 3 and don't have Hella in hand and they're sitting with Lady Sif or Corvus Glaive, they also just win because then they get to discard with no concern.
That's true. I don't know, man. It's oppressive. It's like, and I just don't get it, and then you turn into this, and I know for a fact that, and I've been saying, look, I've joined the crowd. I've been playing that Professor X, that Safety Blade deck that he has out there. It's a good deck. But I know for a fact we're not going to get Hella touched this coming Thursday. They are going to do something to Prof X or Cannonball.
My problem with that is I got no problem with that. Granted, I don't love that. First of all, Prof should be a 5-2. They should have started at 5-2. Why they went to 5-1 blows my mind. They went to 5-1. The reason they went to 5-1 is they're not going to tell anybody. They went to 5-1 because they knew Hella was a problem. They didn't want to touch that. They're like, well, let's give players the Band-Aid to figure out how to be Hella on their own, and it was making Prof X being able to play with Ravona. But touching Prof and or Cannonball without touching Hella seems very off, out of touch. I'm just like, because if you do that, now we're opening the door back up for Hella to run.
Hella's going to be everywhere.
I'm like, come on, please, just I don't. And somebody was like, "Oh, make her a 6-2, make her a 6-0." I'm like, 6-0. That doesn't. Listen, she could be a 6-3. It wouldn't. That's not why you're playing. You don't care about her power,
right? They need to make it where she only brings so many cards. Where you say, okay, Hella raises 2 cards or 3 cards, and that's it. Then because then yes, they've discarded a whole bunch of cards, but if she brings 2 of them that aren't big bodies and pulls back a Lady Sif or pulls back something else, then you're
Yep.
screwed and you're not winning the
Yes.
game.
Correct.
So yeah,
100%.
yep,
But I just, and the conversation was always, it's not that because we can't find a way to beat Hella. That's not what it is.
yeah,
There are ways to beat Hella. Sure. 100%. Outside of the prof way, right? There are a lot of decks that go over the top of Hella. And again, even just a straightforward tribunal deck is one of them. Because a Hella, that solitaire Hella deck is not interacting with you whatsoever. They've got no tech cards, they've
nope,
got no counter cards.
they
They
don't
just want
care.
to do the Hella thing and don't be bothered,
They
right?
don't care.
So if you're playing an all-in tribunal and you just go, okay, Iron Man, Onslaught, Tribunal, you just win. You can't beat that. Nothing beats that. Nothing beats 40 some odd power in every lane, not even Hella. So I'm just like, the answers are there. It's the problem that Hella shouldn't be able to do what it does so easily.
Right,
That's the problem.
right.
I can output Hella power, but I gotta jump through goddamn hoops to get there. I gotta play 67 cards throughout the course of the game just to match that
Yep,
output. And they get to play 3. Like, no,
yep,
no, no, no. Come on.
yeah,
Come on. What are we doing?
yeah. Yeah, I agree. But you're right. It's like a circle that just keeps going round and round, and it's the same thing over and over and over again. And then like I said, I'd almost guarantee this OTA is going to have something for Profex. I know they will.
Probably. It should, because
Yeah,
Prof should be a 5-2, first
yeah,
of all, right?
yeah,
Should be a 5-2. Make it so they either got to play Psylocke again if they want that extra. If they want to ramp them out, you're going to have to play Psylocke
yeah,
or Wave or Electro. You're going to
yeah,
have to,
yeah,
period. Okay.
yeah.
And that in itself is a deck building hindrance. So, okay, I'm okay with that. It's funny because people have been talking about, oh, what if you got to rework? And I'm like, oh, please no. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fun to talk about suggestions for a rework for a card. I will say that. And my immediate thought was, okay, make him on reveal, and he gets to see your opponent's hand.
Okay.
And of course, I'm biased because as a black magic player, I like the rest. So I'm like, yeah, give me something so I can see some. That's the effect. That's the card effect that I'm waiting for. Give me something where I can see my opponent's hand.
That's very
And to be
Profex.
fair,
It's very
it is
Profex-ish, man.
lore wise. It is very Profex. He gets to
Yeah,
read your opponent's mind effectively. You're like, okay, let me see
yeah,
what you got
yeah,
in your hand. Like, I think that's great. First of all, that's where that card should have gone to begin with.
yep,
You're like, what does Profex do in the world in the lore of Snap? Well, he's a telepath. He reads
yep,
minds. How did they not arrive at look at your opponent's hand? I have
yep,
no idea.
yep. Or at the very least, if you don't want to have them see the entire hand, then have them something with, or give it maybe 2 cards if you don't want to do their whole hand
Or
and you
something
don't want
like
to
that.
review. But yeah,
I would
that's
still want to be
yeah,
better.
I'd be down for
Like,
that.
imagine
That's
playing Prof on
perfectly
turn
fits the
5
character.
and you get to see your whole opponent's hand and they've been holding like 5 cards and you're like, well, I know what you got ready for turn 6. I mean,
Yeah,
yes, is it effectively Daredevil? It's a reverse Daredevil, right? You, instead of seeing what they're about to play, you get to
yep,
see what they're about to play next turn. Now you're like, oh, okay, I see what you got. You can only
yep,
draw 1 card here, so I know what your probable next plays are. So now I
yeah,
can snap or whatever that case may be. I think that's so much better. But
yeah.
what do I know?
Yeah, I don't know, man. That it's something that they got to look into and get over because, like I said, they're putting. It's almost like the old verbiage of when you have a leaky dam, right? And you're just sticking a piece of gum
Yep.
on one of the holes,
They just keep
and
putting
then
band-aids over things. Or
right,
they
little
letting the players put
band-aids here
band-aids
and
over it.
there, just a bit, but yeah, it's. You're right. It is going to be if unless they keep doing that, it's like banging your head against the wall because they're
It is.
just gonna. It's gonna keep the same thing just over and over and over and over and over, and it goes from Hella to something else, from Hella to something else, and
It's a vicious cycle.
it really is.
It's
It really
the
is.
the best place for card games to be in, especially one like this with a limited pool, is people get to play whatever they want and not feel like. And again, I was talking to Perry about this. I'm like, Hella's, it is what it is. She does what she does, but yes, she has answers. But me as a player, I shouldn't be forced to play the deck that answers Hella.
Right. Yeah.
I shouldn't be forced to say, oh, I got to put these 4 cards in my deck or 5 cards and then build around that because I got to make sure I can beat Hella.
Yep.
No, that's not healthy for a card game.
Yeah.
So,
No. Yeah. It's true. You're right. Yeah, and I don't get it. I know they come up with the statistics and they look at numbers and all that kind of stuff, but they always say, "Well, hell is within our range of play." I don't know what you're looking at, dude.
What range
Like,
you're talking about?
I don't know what you're looking at because every time I go and play, I'm seeing a whole bunch of it. So I don't know. Like, and I'm certainly not up with the high players. So, and they're seeing it too.
Yes,
So it's like, listen,
yes,
Hella is everywhere.
yes.
Um,
And it
yeah.
has one of the easiest snap and retreat lines
Oh, no
because they
doubt.
know what the if they play the Corvus or the Sif and it hits what they need, snap.
Yep.
If it hits Hella, they retreat.
Yep.
It
That's it.
it has
Yeah.
the easiest snap and retreat lines. It
Yep.
gets to play a few cards and output a ton of power
Hmm.
for what is not effectively an easy thing to do.
Yep.
They just get to do it, like, or it is an easy thing to do. Excuse me. But I'm just like, yeah, sure, no problem. I just get to wait, play Hella. I'm like, okay, well, you're just playing solitaire. I'm not here. I'm not. What I do doesn't matter in this game,
Yeah.
clearly. So
No, it doesn't, and it's not like you can't counter it because they're always
no,
gonna end up having this stuff come out last, so you can't shang it, you
no.
can't counter any of the stuff they're doing, the only
There
counter
were
is lock the lane.
And there were a few times where I'm playing the decks and I'm playing Sarah, I'm playing these other things. I'm throwing Prio and I'm like, I got this. And I'm like, I could put
Yep,
Shang over here. And I'm like,
yep,
and it still doesn't work out. And I'm like,
yep. Because the cards don't land where you need them to. Yep, yep. Yeah, it's super frustrating, it really is. Um, Two things I have to ask you. So one, I saw your video, man. You had a really cool Galactus play. I am a Galactus stan. I love Galactus. I have since I was lucky enough. I pulled him from a Series 5 or what it was, a Series 5 cache when they were
mhm,
around.
yes, I remember
I
those.
got him when they first released Big Bads. And
Ah,
I laugh
a big
about it
hit.
now because I look at it and I'm like, when I first saw the card, I was like, this is trash. Why would I want to blow up two of my own locations? And was like, little did I know, I had no idea that whole Spider-Man thing that worked with
Oh
him at the
God.
time. Oh my, if
Oh
I
my
would have known
God.
that, I would have been probably infinite several times
Oh
over
yeah,
for
for
how early
sure.
I had that card.
For
But
sure.
I love that card. And I like it because I look, I've read that comic book variant of his. I
Oh
own
yeah.
that book. I own it. I've had
Oh
it since
nice.
I was a kid and that's why I love the character. But
That's
I
awesome.
absolutely love it. That there is and I've been playing it. There's a Galactus deck that's roaming around that has all 6 cards in it. Louis 419. It was on Regis' stream.
Oh yeah, okay.
Uh,
The big
yes,
bad deck.
it
Yeah.
is the most fun deck I think I have
Yeah.
ever played because it has no business winning.
No, it
Like
doesn't.
there's no reason you
And you
should
know
be.
it's fun because Regis got it on. Anything Regis
Yep,
is playing is like
yep,
probably
fun.
fun.
Yep. But I saw your video and I'm like, yes, this guy's let's let anybody who plays Galactus is
And
yeah.
because the deck wasn't originally that. The deck was and it's funny because Glazer was talking, he's like, yeah, it's gonna be on the next, I think, well, today's Tuesday, it's gonna be on there tomorrow. Which is fun because my stream day is tomorrow for Snap Judgment, so I get to play
Is
my
that
own
this
deck.
Galactus deck?
Uh, n- Not the version that has it's effectively the same deck. Okay.
Okay.
Galactus got in here because again the deck was doing really well. I was posting about it on Twitter. Everybody was
Yep.
talking about it. Um, it's effectively a Ravonna, Athena, Angela Kitty, Goblins style of deck. It's got
Yeah.
Iron
Okay.
Man
Yeah.
shoved in there, right? And one of the guys that I talked to back and forth on Twitter, Breadsticks, he was like, "Oh, this deck is great." He's like, "I put Galactus in it, and I think it's good still." And I was like, "Oh yeah, what'd you take?" He's like, "I took out Nightcrawler," and I was like, "Huh." I was like, "Yeah, I guess technically Nightcrawler is one of the cards that doesn't need to." When I made the video about the deck, I was like, Nightcrawler doesn't need to be here. It could be something else. Nightcrawler is fine, but if you want to cheapen up the deck, you can put Nightcrawler. But when I originally built it, it had Nightcrawler and was having success overall. But I did the same thing he did. I was like, all right, let me see what that looks like. I took out Nightcrawler and I put in Galactus, and I was like, oh boy. Because like you're playing goblins, you're playing Ravonna,
Yes.
you're playing goblins, you're
Yep.
playing White Widow. You're like,
You're clogging up their lanes.
Galactus works well here, doesn't it? I'm just like,
Mhm.
yes, this beats Profx. I've beaten so many Profx decks. It's great. But I'm like, oh my God, it beats a lot of other things because Galactus, because they're not always. And I had a few people ask me because Elsa's in there too, because I got the whole Angela Kitty Athena package.
Yep.
So I'm like, people have asked me, well, isn't Elsa and the goblins kind of counter synergy.
Right.
And I said, yes, you have to be careful once Elsa's on the board, what you're
Right.
playing where. It's not difficult to play around, but can be tricky sometimes. You have to remind yourself, oh, wait, don't put a goblin in a full lane when Elsa's
Yep.
on the board. Okay. However, what I remind people is that once you're playing Angela Kitty, etc., even Ravonna, once Elsa hits the board, your opponent immediately is not thinking about goblins
Yep.
at all.
That's true.
Okay. So now later you get to go, here's some goblins. And they're not prepared for that.
Yep.
And
Oh yeah.
now taking it a step further because of my good friend Breadsticks, now they're also not thinking about Galactus
Oh, no doubt.
whatsoever.
Yep.
So now you're like, well, those goblins that I got sitting there, all right, here's a Galactus too. Now I just win, right? Now I just win. And that's the most fun / fair way of playing Galactus is just playing him on turn 6 and just winning the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not cheating
Yeah.
him out on turn 5 or turn
Right.
4 or something stupid like that because of wave. You are playing Galactus on 6 and the game's over.
Yep. I saw your last play, man. That's you sweated that one out. What was it like? It was like 2-1 or something, or you.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
yeah. It was like, oh, that's close. That's close because it was like negative zone. And like, that's it's gonna be
Right.
tight.
That was fantastic. I watched it before we started. I'm like, yeah, that's amazing. Anybody who plays Galactus, I'm down with that. I want the card to be made a little better. Everybody was so mad about that card for so long, and they
Yep.
probably won't ever touch him. But I don't know, man. We got Fantastic Four coming out next year.
Ooh,
There's
yeah.
going to be an actual Galactus, the purple Galactus in it, not the stupid cloud that we got before. So I'm
actual
I'm
Galactus.
maybe
We don't talk about those early Fantastic.
no,
Most of the 20th Century Fox stuff we don't want to talk about. We don't talk about
yeah,
except for the first 2 X-Men movies.
yeah,
That's about
right?
it. That's all.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I would definitely go with that. Even that, like the first Fantastic Four film was okay until they came up with Yuppie Doom, and then I was like, yeah, not
Yeah.
good.
No, we need world beater Doom.
I
Like
never
Doom.
understood how you can screw up Doom so bad.
I don't know. I don't
Like
get it.
Doom is just supposed to be this like horrible like
terror.
dictator
He is a
individual,
terror in Snap.
and they made him into this dude who looked like he came off Laguna Beach like 2 days prior. It's like,
Right.
come on, man.
I'm like, this guy takes a whole island and goes, I'm just
Right?
gonna take this over.
Yeah, right.
It's
Like
like-
I don't know, but yeah. So maybe I don't know. Maybe they'll give Galactus some love when the Fantastic Four comes out. Although we'll probably just get a variant. That'll be it. And here's your new variant, and be
It
happy
wouldn't
with
surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Oh man, did you try the new card at all yet?
Yes, briefly.
What'd you think?
She's fun.
Yeah,
I
she
think
is.
I have Sersi before the season. I do rankings, and Laser asked me to do rankings and share my input of how I feel about the cards before the season starts. I had Thena at 1, and I had Sersi at 2. Sersi is fun in a way that can still be competitive because she, like a lot of cards, and and somebody like Jeff Hoagland mentions a lot about creative deck building, right? Cards that require you to make creative deck building choices, not like Red Hulk, which is like take big thing and slam it in here somewhere. No. Sersi requires you to do stuff like she goes both ways in a way where, are you having a lot of problem with Clog or your opponent playing a lot of BS that you can't deal with? Well, Sersi might offer you some reprieve, right? You got a goblin or something stupid sitting on your side. You're like, okay, she can flip it into something that might not ruin the game for me. Okay. Right. So, which is fun. You can play your own stuff. You know what's fun? The first thing I built, and I only got to play like a game or 2 with it, was an Annihilus package with other things.
I had that too. Yeah.
With goblins.
Yeah.
But I also, because now I'm stuck on this goblin thing. So like I have Ravonna, I have these goblins, because my next thought is, if you whiff on a goblin, you're now not upset, because now you're like, well, Sersi can just clean that up for me. Right. Yeah. You don't have to do like, and not in a way where you used to do with like Carnage or something like that, which is fine, which Carnage was a previous kind of bailout. Right. But Sersi is a different, because if you whiff on a hobgoblin, Sersi can turn it into a 6-cost card.
Yep.
And that could just be, yes, could it be Destroyer? Of course it could. But it could be Infinite, could be Blob, it could be Doom, it could be, you know what I'm saying? Like, there are way more things good that it could be than bad.
Yep.
Or it could be, even if it's Agatha, Giganto, or something, it's turn 6 at this point. You don't
Yep.
care if it turns into a 6/14
Yep,
from a
right.
5 -8.
Yep.
That's a big
Yeah.
swing in power.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she was fun, man. I had her in a nihilist list as well. Mine was more junk based. I had debris in there. So
Oh, I put debris in mine too.
did you?
We're on
I
the
mean,
same page, sir.
there you go.
Clearly we have a
Nice.
similar thought
Nice.
mind. We were black
Yep.
controlled magic players. And
Yep, that's
we-
it. Yep. And I mean that's cool too, because you're just turning rocks on your side into better things.
And it doesn't matter. Like,
And
most of the 2s in the game aren't gonna screw you.
right,
So you're like, all right, I don't mind if it's Colleen Wing is not great.
right.
Anything discard, you're like, oh, that kind
Yeah,
of sucks. But
yeah.
you're not,
Yeah.
you don't feel terrible all the time.
Right.
Most of the 2s, you're like, okay, that's fine. I'll take that swinging power, especially from a
Mhm.
rock. If it turns into Maximus or Silk or
Mhm.
Lizard or something that swings more power in your direction, yeah, sure,
Let's
you'll take that for sure.
let's see if I have the picture here, because I think I took it to share. But I think my first, yeah, okay. So no, darn it, I don't have any more. My first play, I got a Maximus, like you were just saying. This reminded me. I got a Maximus and a Cull Obsidian out of her on the first
Yeah.
time. I'm like, okay, this is pretty good.
Yeah,
Like
that can happen. That can
that could-
happen. I mean, your first play was very different from Guest Gaming's first play, where he shared that with us. And his first play was she turned the cards into, one of them turned into Viper and shift and
shot the
sent
card over
her to the other side of the board, and the other card turned into MODOK.
and just dumped this whole hand. I
So
was
like, that's a bad
watching.
swing.
I was watching. I think I was watching Teddy Ninja
Yeah,
playing,
yeah.
and he got his first 2 swings with her. First swing, Destroyer, bam, entire board gone. Then he got
Can't go
another
wrong.
one that I can't remember what it was. Oh, he ended up getting Professor X,
Oh my
and he
god.
literally only had 1 card on the,
Oh
or
my God.
he had 1 card in his side of the board. The player on the other side had like 10 or 12
Oh,
over there, and Professor
course.
X walks away, and I'm
Of
like,
course.
oh my god.
Of course. Yeah, my first swings with her, I think, was like, mine were tame. It was like Iron Fist and Quake. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
sure, from rocks.
Yeah, why not?
I'm like, yeah, that's fine. We're
Yep.
good.
Yep.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, she's a fun card. You're right. I mean, fun is a good way to describe her. Will she ever be meta heavy? Probably not.
No,
But
probably not.
she's fun though.
But she
Um,
could be a good tech/swing card in your Annihilus bills if those start to become a thing again, right? Because the nerf sent it back down into, okay,
Yeah.
lowered play rate.
Yeah.
So I think that if those start to become more of a thing again, right? People start to explore different deck building with that.
Yep.
She might fit in that deck.
Yeah.
Probably not much else there otherwise,
Right.
but she's at least fun.
I think you're right. And I think that if they do nerf Prof X, I do think Annihilus is going to come back.
Yeah,
Because
agreed.
people like ways to like lock down opponents. They like that kind of a deck, and that's the way to do it.
Now you're just back to a Nihilus package. You might
Yep.
put Sersi in there. You put Cannonball in there. You're gonna put all
Yep.
these. Put some
Yep.
goblins in it. It'll
Yep.
it'll be good. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
It won't be because of Sersi, but having her as an option to go, okay, well, I because sometimes you take a chance on a 2 or 3 card lane. You're like, man, if I could stick a goblin in here, that would be great, right? But sometimes you miss, and you're like, well, Sersi can go, all right, don't worry, I'll clean that up for you, right?
Yep.
Just in case you do. She becomes the, okay, I didn't draw a Nihilus. Okay, well, I got Sersi. Okay, well, let's see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think she's fine. And you know what? Look, sometimes in this game, cards that we get are just sometimes like this. When they're just fun, hey, that's okay. Cards should be fun. That's how the game should be played. They don't all necessarily have to be, well, this has to fit in this meta deck.
Yes, it's tough because people get caught up with that, with that mindset because, for me, comparing it to Magic, when you have like a 200-ish card set, there are going to be a bunch of bad cards in
Oh,
that
no
set,
doubt. Yeah.
right?
Oh God. Yeah.
There might be 10 really, really good cards
Mhm.
and then a bunch of stuff in the middle, and then like most of it's gonna be crap, right? It's a bunch of common fodder. Okay.
Yep.
So I understand sometimes where people get well, Snap is one card a week, which is not insignificant because people have to remember this is a live service game
Yep.
and they're very active. Granted, Second Dinner is not without fault, but they are very active for what is a live service game, giving you new content,
Oh yeah.
taking it back if they miss. They're like, okay, well, Leech, we put it to 4 and that was a bad idea. It's a week and a half later, he's back to 5. So
Yep.
like there's enough tug there where they're like, okay, we can play with this. So I do understand the need where some people are like, well, uh, this new card just came out and it sucks. It's bad. It doesn't fit into right. Just like you're saying, plug and play in X new meta deck.
Right.
It doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, well, every card's not going to be that. Right.
Correct.
Took a while for some cards to get to like Havoc. People were like, this card's terrible. I was like, I'm not sure that's true. And it'll take some time, but everybody will see it.
Hey,
And eventually it gets there. Right.
Havoc's in that safety blade deck, man, and it does a pretty damn good job when you stick it out on turn 5.
Yeah. Cause you know
Yeah.
why? Because Ravona is the crux of all these decks, making them real good.
Yeah, you're
Nobody
right.
wants to talk about it. And I'm fine with that because I like
That's a
Ravona.
card that might end up eating a nerf too.
Nobody's talking about.
Yeah, they may do something to her.
The unfortunate part about that is that Ravona was a 3 and nobody played the card. She was
Yep.
bad. They
Yeah.
moved her to 2 and it was like, oh man, she is fantastic.
Mhm.
The problem is that there doesn't get to be a middle ground that seems fair. That's
Yeah.
the problem with some of those cards. The same
Yep.
thing that happened with Mobius, although he settled in at 3 pretty well, right?
Yeah.
It's like Zabu, right? Dead card at the moment.
Oh yeah.
So
It's
like
gone.
it'll eventually go back to an ongoing, but guess what? My guess is that it'll come back as an ongoing, but it'll be 3 cost.
Yep.
And at that point, then you're like, okay, I don't really get to take advantage of really discounting my 4s.
Yep.
Like you don't, but you still have to admit that it's broken that you play a 2 cost card and then get to immediately follow it up by perpetually getting to play 4s for cheaper
Oh
the rest
yeah,
of the
for
game.
sure.
So like maybe it's okay if he's a 3 and then you still get to play 2 4s on turn 6. So like that's really what you want to do
Yep.
at the end. Like that's the end game, right?
Yep.
But we'll see what happens with that. But I don't know what the problem is. You move her to 3, she's dead. She's
Yeah.
going to be a gone card, right?
Yep.
Like that. That's it.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
yes,
that's yeah.
the best thing you could do is like you play her on 3, you could still play a Hobgoblin on turn 4. That still exists. You can still do that.
Yep.
But like she's gonna get really narrow. And
Yeah.
that's a shame. It's just a shame that there's no middle ground. That's the
Yep.
problem. There's no middle ground for her. I mean, make her a 2-0. I don't know. I don't know what the first next thing is, right? Because she's
Yeah.
a 2-3. So I'm like, maybe take a couple of points of power off of her first and see where that lends us. I don't know.
We'll find out soon, I think. We've got that OTA coming in just a couple days. So
See what
no,
happens.
actually, well, it's 2 days. Yeah, Wednesday, Thursday, a couple
Yeah.
days. We'll see. I would imagine there'll be some changes. We got some. I mean, obviously, we went through the Thanos change. I'm okay with all that.
I like
I'm all
Thanos
right with
change.
that. I like
Love it.
Thanos. I think he should be played that way.
That's the point because you want to play the card. The problem with Thanos before was that okay, you're playing a Thanos deck, but your whole end game is to not play Thanos.
Correct. You're playing
Well, that's
stones.
stupid.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. Now you can play him out. He's almost like a Jeff. You can throw him in a lane.
I
That's
lost
how
the game because of that.
Yeah.
I lost
Yeah.
the game because of that because I forgot. Because I was playing that same deck, that Galactus deck, and somebody was like, "No, play Galactus in the thing," and I was like, "Okay," because they had Space Throne.
Yep.
Space Throne was on the board. It was a middle location. They had Jeff there.
Yep.
They had Jeff sitting there the whole game, and I'm like, "Okay." So I hit Red Guardian with Jeff on like turn 4 or turn 3 or something like that. I was like, "Let me take a chance. Let me take a chance. Let me start off Space. We can win Space Throne, no problem. If I just hit the Jeff." Like, okay, so I did that. I'm like, "Okay, we're good. We're good." And then I forgot Space Stone was on the board. So I'm like, okay, yeah, we're good. Turn 6. I'm like, we got the setup. I was like, oh, we don't even need to play Galactus. Forget about that.
He plows.
Here comes Thanos into the Space Throne.
Yep.
I'm like, oh no. I forgot
Uh-huh.
about that.
It's going to take a while for people to realize that. Yeah. I didn't know how that worked either when I first read it. They were very unclear about that. And it was like, yeah, I didn't know that he could go into Prof X lane either. I had no idea. And I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, but see, I'm again, like I said, I'm all right with that.
I'm
That's
good with
look,
that.
he's so badass. He's a god in the comic
That's
books.
the
That's
point, right?
he's what he is. He should be the focus of the deck.
Yes,
That's yeah.
1000%. And then it
Yep.
also incentivizes you. You have to keep more than one stone alive on the board,
Yep.
right? Because before you're just like, oh, just to make sure Power Stone doesn't get clipped somehow.
Yep.
Now you have to account for Power Stone, Soul Stone,
Yep.
Space Stone. You have to be like, oh, you got to keep 3 stones intact on the
Yep.
board
Yeah. Yeah.
if you want to take full advantage of Thanos.
Oh my god! Before people were making decks so that they bring a Killmonger in. The Killmonger was blowing up their
You
own
just blow up
stones.
everything because they didn't care.
Yeah, and yep, yep. No, I like that change. I'm pretty happy with that. I think
Yeah,
that's
I'm
kind of
fine with
cool.
that. I'm fine
Yeah.
with that. I like it.
So, well, listen. What do you want to see? We talked a little bit about it earlier, but what are you most excited about with what's coming up in Snap, and what are some things that you kind of want to see in the future?
Well, thankfully we talked about some of that already as it is. Like I
We
would
did. Yeah, we went
yeah,
over like draft mode and all
I
that, but
would
like I guess I could say maybe even the more immediate future. Like obviously we see data mines, right? We saw the
yes.
data mines for all of Deadpool. We have that season coming up. We saw Young Avengers, obviously, as
Yeah,
people are fired up
yeah,
about man with the
sure.
arrows and stuff like
Oh yeah.
that.
Kate Bishop
Um,
is phew.
we even got a little sneak peek into the symbiote, the Madam Web season,
Yeah.
where
I
they
didn't see
showed the
that one
four.
yet, but
It's pretty cool. They showed the cool thing for me was, and I get it. Madam Web was awful. The movie was terrible, but they showed a card for symbiote Spider-Man, which I was like, that's awesome. So he has the black costume. Spider-Man has his own card.
mm,
And I'm like,
mm,
all right, I like
I
that
like that.
because
I
I was
like that.
wondering because we already have a variant basically for that,
Yes.
where the McFarlane one where the
Mm.
Spider-Man's kind of sitting up on the, but I like that. So I was kind of all right. That's and that I think that's the September season. So, but yeah, what season are you really most looking forward to that we've got coming up after Eternals?
Well, probably now that one. I haven't looked at it yet, but that
Yeah,
one's
dude. Yeah, Madam Web's a card. The symbiote Spider-Man's a card. Also, the clone Spider-Man from the comic books.
okay,
I
gotcha.
forget his name,
Yeah.
but the one that wore the red and the blue, had the
Uh
hoodie at one
yes,
point in
yeah, yeah, that's
time.
the
It's supposed to be Peter's Parker's twin or something like that. They were
gotcha.
born at yeah. So
I
that's kind of cool.
I like that idea. I love Spider-Man stuff.
Yeah, me too.
I am the Young Avenger. First of all, Marvel Boy is gonna be broken. They have to
Oh
change that.
my god, yeah.
No way
There's
he's
no
gonna
way
stay
that
that
card
way.
comes out that way.
So,
No
but I'm
way.
sure they know that. But it's data
Yeah,
mine, right? So I'm sure that card changes. But
yeah,
poof, um, that season, like I said, Young Avenger stuff. That's gonna be fun. That part of it is the things that I like that remain a constant in this game is getting these new cards,
yeah,
getting to have fun with these new seasons, and you're like, okay, this new card, and I can get it, and da da da, and you can build this. I just like I said before, I most want there to be a place where you can just play those cards and not have to feel like, well, I can do something else that's just better.
yeah.
Because the Gilgamesh is a good example. Gilgamesh is fine because when I
He's
built
okay.
my
He's
deck,
okay.
when I built that deck, my most recent, it started as Athena. I was like, all right, let me put Athena, Gilgamesh. Let me see where that starts. And I put Chavez and I put all those things, that buff cards, right?
Yep.
Medusa, all of that. And I'm like, okay. I even tried, I put Bast in there, I had Iron Man, I had all these things, and I'm like, all right, okay. Uh, so every time I went to play Gilgamesh, I'm like, it's like 5'10, 5'11.
Yep.
Da, da, da. And mind you, I've now jumped through hoops to get that to happen. So I'm like, yeah, but you could just play Red Hulk and he'll be bigger than that. And you have to do nothing to get him to be bigger than that.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, so then I went, all right, we're taking out Gilgamesh and Chavez and all these things. And then I put in the goblins and all this other stuff. And I was like, now we have a deck.
There you
But I'm
go.
like, because immediately I was like, well, what can I do that's similar in cost? It's bigger than maybe Gilgamesh. And I was like, well, Iron Man's good. And I have Ravonna sitting over there. And I'm like, well, with Ravonna, he's 4. Iron Man always makes things bigger than 11.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Iron Man needs like a card to be
Yep.
bigger than 11 with him. Just
Yep.
one. Depends on, you could put Iron Man with a Maximus and he's better than a
That's
5'11
that's
Gilgamesh.
true.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, Gilgamesh might not be great, but that's
Yeah.
okay.
He's
But
an
here's my
average
problem:
season pass. Yeah, that's okay.
he doesn't need to be over the moon.
Right.
But I think Gilgamesh is a card that works great if you're like new to Snap. If
Oh,
you have
for
a
sure.
low
'Cause,
collection
dude.
level,
Oh
Gilgamesh is
yeah.
great.
If you're playing with Blue Marvel and a bunch of small cards, it's over.
Great. You're
Yeah.
gonna win a lot of games of
Oh
Snap by
yeah.
doing that.
No doubt.
For sure, right?
And that's good. Lower level players need that. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. And I
Yep.
think it's okay for a season pass card. And I know they won't say this, but Gilgamesh is 100% tailored to the newer player experience.
I'm okay
Gilgamesh,
with that. I'm all
and
right
I'm
with that.
fine with that.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm okay
fine
with
with
that.
that. Gilgamesh, and sure, some great deck builders have put some decks together and Gilgamesh is in it and he can be good and that's fine. But Gilgamesh is for newer players. There's
Yeah,
no
I
way
agree.
he isn't. There's no way. Because that's what you want as a newer player. That's what you're doing. You're playing Blue Marvel. You're playing Patriot. You're playing this. Yeah, you can play Gilgamesh, and as long as you Patriot on the board, you can play Gilgamesh and Squirrels on turn 6, and that's an explosion of power, right? As long as you have Blue Marvel down and Patriot down, maybe even Mystique down before all of that. So,
Yep.
like, that's a big output of power. So, like, that's a thing that's really good for early game players.
Yep. Yep.
It gets finicky
I would
later.
almost say, now that I think about what your statement there, look at a lot of these cards, and I think you can almost say the same thing. Look at
Yes.
Sersi. Sersi is fun with would be a lot of fun with newer players. If they bought this season pass, right? And then on next, you're getting RSM. These cards all kind of look like maybe they've sat and thought these cards might be pretty good for newer
For
players that
newer
are out there.
players, Makari.
Right,
Like,
yeah, right, exactly. Like that, no one's gonna play that card, but like you said,
and they had
they
to
could.
change her to a 3/4 already, right? They already had the
Yeah,
buffer. So I'm
yeah,
like, yeah, but that's a great card for new players. It's
yeah.
it's you know, it's the Mbaku's the
Yes, jumps out
Silver
of your
Surfer,
hand.
like, it's
Yep,
just like it's like, okay, she
yep,
gets it's a free 4 power, which is
yep,
not insignificant, but you know,
yep.
some what the creators will all do our deck building. We'll try her.
Mhm.
We'll put her in Surfer. We'll put her in whatever. Who knows? Somebody might put her in C4.
Yeah,
I don't remember last time C4 was ever a thing
yep.
because you're either like C2, C3, C5.
Yeah,
Like, but
C5. Yeah,
you know, maybe somebody might try it. Yeah, the
yeah,
Jeff Hogans of the world might try it, right? So like, but otherwise, like I said, these cards this month really look like they're early player game cards. Now next month, Kate Bishop, you're talking about,
yep,
okay, these are some good cards.
yeah.
These are cards that are like, okay, Kate Bishop, Jeff is already over the moon excited about Kate Bishop because
Oh yeah,
she's
for the
got
yeah,
bounce
yep,
spam written all over her.
yep. Yeah, oh, no doubt. Yeah, absolutely, dude. All those arrows in your hand, like, yep.
Dude,
You have little mini goblins with those that you're sending over the other
she is going to
place.
be very good.
Stick
And that's
Sasquatch in
fine.
that, then you'll have a
Right.
Sasquatch out. It's like,
Sometimes it's
oh my
okay
god.
for cards to be really good on arrival as well, like
Yeah.
Thena. Thena
Yep.
is
Oh,
really good,
Thena's
right?
damn good. Yeah,
Right.
I got her variant that I had open for that. That's a
Nice.
fire variant,
Yeah,
dude.
it is. It is.
No, I agree. I think that yes, because starter players too. A lot of them may be playing the Angela lines. They may be
Of course
playing
they are.
that kind of stuff, and so and like I said, if that was what was behind this, I'm 100% okay with it. I'm
Fine with that
100%
too,
okay with
because
it.
you have to do
Mhm.
something because
Yep.
you're not giving them the accelerated sort of track to catch up.
Yeah.
You're not doing that, right? Because that's another
Yeah.
thing people kind of were hoping was maybe on this roadmap. But
Yeah. My God, I talked about it on this show more than once. Give them bundles to buy.
yes.
Give them a bundle to buy. Like, say
Yeah.
they want to play Destroy, let them buy a Destroy
Let
bundle.
them give
You're,
them a destroy bundle. Put a price tag
yep,
on it.
yep,
Yeah, spend $30,
yep,
$40. You're gonna get
yep,
a destroy package.
yep.
It'll be who's in series 3? Venom, I think, is
Venom,
series 3.
Carnage.
Like,
I know Carnage is in there. Yeah, I mean, give them, like I
just
said, even if you throw in one higher one, maybe one of them has, I don't know, one of
null.
them maybe has null in it. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, 100%. I think that they'd make money For
Of
sure
course.
they'd make money.
Of course they
It's
would.
like when Magic would sell starter decks to
Yes.
people, right?
Same thing, right?
Same concept.
And Snap, people wanna once people have identified an archetype they're like, "Okay, but I don't have 6 of these cards that go
Hmm.
well here." Discard is another one, right?
Yep.
I tell people all the time, I was like, "Yeah, if you're playing discard and you don't have Proxima, if you don't have I mean, even Corvus goes in there, but you don't
Corvus
need him for
now, yeah.
dedicated discard, but if you don't have
Yep.
Proxima and MODOK and you're kinda just like,
You pretty much got nothing.
you're
Yeah.
playing a
Yeah.
not good discard deck."
Right.
Okay? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're missing a thing with that because I think they can certainly earn more money. Certainly, new players into the game would be like more inclined to be like, well, I know I started over for a little bit myself. I
I
wanted to go
tried that on a
back.
separate account. Yeah.
Yeah, I started a separate account. I wanted to just kind of go and see because look, the beginning of the game is very enjoyable. It
You
really
know
is.
what's it is. You know what's funny? Before you continue, is that I did that. I did that at some point last year.
Me too. The end of last
And
year.
I did it for a few months. I was like, "Oh, it's great." I was like, I think I hit infinite once. And I was
Yep.
like, This can be done. You can do this." And
Yep.
and I was like, "Okay." But like every time, I was switching back and forth between accounts. And I was like, "Okay." And it started to get a little more difficult. And I was like, "Oh, because I wanted to make sure it was 100% free to play. I didn't
Hmm.
spend a dime on that account. I didn't buy the Welcome Captain America bundle, nothing."
Yep.
So I'm like, "Okay, let me see how this is for free to play." And I'm like, "Okay, it got harder." I was like, "Hmm." And then I got to the Loki season, and I'm like, "Yeah, no. This
Yep.
is where the buck stops."
Yep.
Because I'm like, I can't compete here. And
Yep.
this is me as I'm a good player,
Yep.
but no, not a dime spent. I'm like, this is where the buck stops. Because I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't. You can't.
No.
I was like, I don't have everything I need.
Yep. I
And now,
noticed it. Yep.
yeah,
100%. I noticed it early on too. You're getting to the point where even if you're going into friggin' proving grounds, you're getting slaughtered.
yeah.
With
Because
these,
because
yeah,
Proving Grounds turned into free play in Magic, where people would take red deck wins into free play on
yep,
Arena. I'm like, why are you playing that here?
yep,
This is testing place. Go
yep,
somewhere else. Free red deck wins. Red deck win the game in 3 turns is for ranked play.
yep,
Get that out of here. Like we're just trying to do. I'm just trying to test a deck over here, and you're bringing mono red in here. Like go away, go away.
yeah,
But and that's what Proving Grounds became. Proving Grounds is supposed to be like a fun, like let me test some stuff out mode, and it
yeah.
became let's hurry up and get through this. I'm gonna play a tier 1 deck here. What do you? That's what Gold
Oh, I know. I can't
Conquest is
stand
for.
that.
Go away.
If I go in there and I see somebody play, in fact, I think I just did. I was messing around with Sersi, so I just went in there to play a game quick. I go in there playing Hella. I'm like, are you kidding me right
What are
now?
you doing here? You
Yeah.
know how this deck works because you don't have to play much of it. You play
And then
three. You're playing 3 cards. Go away.
and then I snap first turn, right? And I'm like, okay, let's see. And they don't snap back. I'm like,
Oh
are
my
you
god.
serious?
Yeah.
You're gonna play out a game in here with the best deck or one of the best decks in the game.
And the deck that you don't have to figure out
Right.
how to work it.
For what? Like, what is the
It's not
purpose
like,
of
oh, I'm
this?
trying to figure out how this deck works, right?
Oh
No.
my
You
god.
don't need to figure out how those hella decks work.
It
They
drives me
work, they
crazy.
do everything for you. You don't have
Yeah.
to do anything.
It drives me crazy, man. It's nuts. Oh my gosh.
Agreed.
Oh man. Well, look, this has been an awesome conversation. I know we've been a little all over the place, but
It's okay.
I absolutely loved it. It was a great time. Thanks so much for being here, dude. It's
Yes, sir.
man, I even looked at the time like, damn, I've had this poor guy 2 hours and 20 minutes. But man,
Pleasure for me.
you are obviously welcome to come back anytime. We obviously have a lot, and we're Best Buy guys. He worked at Best Buy for a
We have a
while.
lot more in common than we knew before we got
Yeah,
here. Huh?
right. I mean, Final Fantasy players, like, I mean, come on, man. Like, this is
Black
uh,
players in Magic, like come, it's
right.
getting eerie at a point here,
It
right? Like,
is. I know. Like I mean, yeah. Like people say, your brother from another. I mean, I
yeah,
don't know. Maybe that's what it is. But yeah,
clearly.
this was really cool, dude. I had a ball, and I know we got off on the people listening to the show, but like we got off on tangents. But hey, it's fun, man.
Listen, this is why you live. This is what podcasts are for.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, man. Once more before we go, again, tell everybody where they can find you, when you stream and stuff like that. Before we head out for the night.
Yes, sir. You guys can catch me over again on YouTube and Twitch at GamingWithFlashX, and on Twitter because they want to be difficult at
Yes, always.
GWFlashX. come on, hang out with me over there. I'm always tweeting about Snap a lot, different games and different things. I'm tweeting about that stuff as well. When I have a new deck, I tweet it there. I make a new video about it on YouTube. Check that out. And again, come on my streams on Wednesdays. We have a lot of fun. We do Throwback Thursdays. I'm trying to get my Friday night fights going again. So we're doing a lot of things on different days where we have a lot of fun doing things that aren't just Snap, because Snap is one game, but there's so many other games in the landscape. You come, have some fun, enjoy. And again, it's chill vibes. I am not one of those players that care about wins and losses like that. We lose 8 cubes, we win 8 cubes. It's no big deal. We're having fun. As long as everybody has a good time, I'm having a good time. It's cool.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I've got to stop over for the Throwback Thursday, man. I got to see what you're doing over there. That's going to be awesome to watch.
Heck yeah.
Oh, man. Make sure you check them out, guys. So for those of you that are watching on YouTube, like I always say, please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Drop a like on the video. Leave some comments. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Talk about video games like we did. Don't care what it is. Leave me some comments underneath here. I love it. I'll always answer them. And make sure you check him out, of course, on Twitter and on his streams. I know I'm going to check out those Throwback Thursdays for those old-time video games, man. That's very, very cool. All right, guys, that is going to do it for me for this week. Please make sure you check out the audio pod, which also came out today a little bit earlier. And then, of course, I've got some guests coming up next week as well and the week after. So that is it. Have a great rest of your night, folks. Please stay safe always. Be kind to one another. And hopefully I will catch you all in the next episode of Snap Decisions. This is your Snap DJ signing off.